Okay, like to first foremost say good morning to everybody. We want to welcome you to our
Good morning.
safeguard training. Morning. I'm Pastor Francis, and I'm assisted today by my wife Delavon. And just to reinforce, Delavon is not working for the conference, but Delavon does.
Can't hear you.
Is together. Hi, we Cynthia. We do a lot of ministry together. And when it comes to safeguarding, she is an experienced school teacher, and she also has run organizations as well and done a lot of safeguarding. So that's the qualification there. Okay, so we are both going to be sharing this morning, and we're happy to have you here because it's a very important training that we are embarking, and it's really basically looking at safeguarding our children. And we don't say vulnerable adults anymore, but we say adults at risk. And this is really important. Now, because it is safeguarding training, I do want to kind of ask you to do something for me. It's good to see your names, and we do want you to put your church. I see most of you have done that, as a few people need to just do that. However, we do need to see you are as well. So really, in this training, we ask you to, where possible, really put your cameras on. That is the thing. And obviously keep your microphones muted unless you are participating.
What did the
Cameras on.
Yeah, and that's what we ask you to do. And we want to minimize distractions with background noise. So when just keep the background noise down. I can hear a little bit at the moment, so it does help if we can do that. But having your cameras on is important because then we know you engage with it. Unless, of course, you have to do something, internet drops or something is really serious, then please interact with us in the chat on that. But ideally, because of the nature of this training, it's good to be able to see you and be engaged. I think also, I think it's really important for me to probably say this as well, that a lot of the information we're going to share today, some of it is of a sensitive nature. And because of that, some of the content may not be appropriate for our children. So if you've got children in the room, please consider using your headphones or maybe just angling your screen in a way that it's away from them. And also, if you're happy to share any of your own experiences, sometimes people do share on this, please bear in mind confidentiality. And maybe it's better sometimes to anonymize those experiences rather than make them personal, for example, and stories you share. So we want everybody to feel safe today. That's important as well, because it is a safeguarding training. And we are conscious there is a number of people on already. We have 145. I know when I looked on the list this morning, it was about 157. It just jumped from 77 last night. So, there is a large number on. So we want you to be safe. Now, we have some people monitoring the Zoom for us today, which will help you with the questions and interact. Good to see Brother Mark as well. We have a number of people here. We have my secretary, Sister Maxine, is here. Maybe you want to say hi, Sister Maxine, and introduce yourself.
Thank you very much, Pastor. Pleasant good morning, everyone. This is Sister Campbell, and we welcome you all today, and we look forward to a productive day together. God bless you all.
Thank you, Sister Campbell, for this, because Sister Maxine, she holds a very big portfolio because she also has the women's and Sabbath school as well, and it is quite, and safeguarding now as well, so it's quite involved. But she keeps us going and keeps me on my toes, so that is good to have her support. And also I've got one of my colleagues, Pastor Simon, also Pastor Luca and Stella, another one of our admin supports is on. So it's good to have you guys help to monitor the Zoom for us, and we I've given them rights. So they're helping to sort of monitor and just keep things going for us in that area. So they will help liaise with your questions and so forth. So the other thing I want to just make sure you all have, I did email out the policy to everybody beforehand. Hopefully you've received that. If not, maybe I could ask one of you guys who are monitoring it just to send the policy again on the chat. Hopefully you should have received that. I sent you two policies. One is a PDF and one is a Word version. The reason why we sent you the Word, that's never for you to share. That is for your personal use because it helps you to take sections out as you need. And in terms of the training, that will also help you. So that's why you have a Word version. But when you share it with anybody in your church, please make sure it is the PDF because we don't want any changes made. If any changes are to be made to the policy, that is something the BUC will do. So please, that Word version is just really for your reference because you've come to this training and it's to help you in that process. So that is basically some of the things we want to say. Is there anything else before we have a prayer, Delabon, you want to mention?
No, I think we've covered.
Okay.
We've covered everything.
Okay. Let us just, we can see a few more people have come on. We've asked.
Just remembered.
Yes, you have remembered something.
I've just remembered one thing. I think you needed to just see who was doing the DBS side,
Yes,
highlighting on their.
That's correct. That's right.
On their.
Thank
with
you.
their name.
Thank you, Delabon. That's why it's good we've got two of us here. It's very important. We know this training is a joint training. So because now my new capacity, I have safeguarding and I also inherited the secretariat's role with the DBS side now is now come under my portfolio as one. So I would understand we have some DBS officers with us today. Now, we're going to have a little section for you as we go along, although it's important you have a full safeguarding as well. But I need to know who is the DBS person. Now, hopefully you should be a separate person from the safeguarding, but I accept that some churches, they may have one and the same people. That's fine. So what I might need you to do, because we're going to have some breakout rooms later, if you could maybe list next to your name DBS, so we know you are a DBS person, and we will not put you in a breakout room when we do break at a certain point when we want to have a chat with you specifically. Can I get some confirmation? Do we have many DBS people here? You could show your hand in the chat if you want. Put your little hand up to say no. Yes, we've got one or two. I see Linda. I don't know if some of our team could make note of this. We just need to see that. So it's Linda, Lawrence, Scott, Dawn. I'm seeing some names. Barbara, Ken, Angela.
I think they'll still need to put the DBS on.
We do need to see. There's so many to remember now. It will help if you put.
Oh yeah, good. You want everywhere.
Control 1. It's a claw top.
It would really help us if we can see that, because when
Sorry, I can't hear anything now. I think you've gone on mute.
sorry, I think we muted. Yes. Okay, so please, yes, I can see some of you have put DBS in. That's helpful. Thank you. So we know who's DBS. Okay. Right, so what we're going to do, see a few faces I know, so it's good to have you on, the guys as well. Paul, you look like you're in the Caribbean there. It looks really nice. Welcome, Elder. Let us just bow our heads now as we begin with prayer, and then we will go straight in. But I just wanted to give you some preliminaries, giving you some time while we begin starting today. Shall we just bow our heads together? Gracious Father, Lord, we just want to thank you for the calling on each of our lives as we now begin this safeguarding training. We want to pray because we've got a very big number on today, but I pray that we may be attentive. I pray that we will share together, learn together, and grow together. And most of all, be those instruments of change in our churches to keep our families and our churches safe, but also uphold the principles of your word that you have called us to, we pray. For we ask these things now in Jesus' name. Amen.
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 Hey, everybody.
Amen.
Amen. So I have given you a few preliminaries about the thing. I hope most of you may have come in and heard. One of the things we've asked is that you really try and keep your cameras on for this event, because this is a safeguarding thing, and unless there's real exceptional reasons for safety reasons, but please liaise with our staff if you do that. I can see we've had a number of chats in the emails, so I am hoping our team will monitor that if there's questions, and you'll alert us to that. We're going to share the screen now if we can, just to begin our session today.
The only thing I will say is, if somebody does have a question, you may need to now take your hands down, because otherwise we won't know if there's a legitimate question that somebody would like to ask. That we will acknowledge as we go along if you do need some more clarity on something. But if you put DBS beside your name along with your church, then we'll be able to know when we have to break out which people to put in the rooms. So you could do that, that'd be brilliant.
Pastor Francis, I'm just aware that you mentioned individuals sharing information. Could I therefore ask that if we do share information as personal information, it stays within this forum here, if possible, please?
Yes, yes, Mark, and that's why I said I'll probably better repeat that one as well. Actually, in terms of information sharing, we sometimes do have people share things, but ideally, we want to keep that confidential. That's one. But number two, our advice to you is that you keep it more of anonymous if you do share stuff. You with me? But obviously, anything as you said, Mark, we do share here has to stay where it is. And ideally, we're not encouraging you to do that. That's what we really say in a polite way, to be honest with you. We're not really encouraging. And because obviously this Zoom as well, bear in mind, we are recording. We can edit, obviously, stuff like that, which we will do. But ideally, we need to use this for some training as well. So, be sensitive to what we share. But in other things as well, which I would say with you, sometimes with these events, because of what we're discussing, sensitive things come up, and we don't know what it's going to trigger, and we don't want anybody to leave here unsafe. So I'm just going to ask them just to put up the counselling number. We have a counselling line which you can ring and leave your name number. Someone will get back to you within 24 hours. But if it does trigger anything, you need to take a break, by all means do that. Or the other thing I would ask you to do is we can stay on a little bit at the end and we can have a chat, because we'll stop the recording. We do not want anybody to leave here feeling disturbed, because we understand some of the things we discuss can sometimes trigger stuff, and that's for your safety, really. That's what we say in there, really. Okay, so I hope that helps, but thank you, Brother Mark, for bringing that one up. The idea of the policy, as it says here, is the safeguarding policy is to make you more aware or more familiar with the policy. Now, it's not meant to be kept on your shelf growing dust. It's only as good as it's implemented. And I always say this, each church has to implement the policy, I guess, with their own circumstances. So what I mean by that, some churches may have like a load of children. There's more things you need to be doing there. Some may have less, but you have to gear the aspects of this policy to the various needs of your church. It is an adult and child safety policy that we are talking about today. I personally want to see us get to the stage where we have 2 independent ones and do training for 2 independent ones. That's where we're going. At the moment, we are training on both. However, bear that in mind. That's why we've given you a Word version. So you need to adapt the elements of your policy. We encourage you to bring it up on your church board. Your pastors have all had a lot of recent training. They are there to support you. I don't know how many on this platform are safeguarding persons or leads, but it's crucial you don't just come to this training and keep the information to yourself. It's important you do some training in your own individual church settings. And that's what this is about. And at the end of this, when we've given you the test and everything, you need to indicate to us or put on that paper the fact that you are safeguarding leads, and I will then make sure you get some other additional information to help you deliver some training in your churches. We need to be talking about this. Ideally, every board meeting, this should be something you should be doing. As it says here, you want to become more aware of protection. You want to be able to identify good working practices. You want to be able to know what actions to take. It's not about having this policy and that things won't happen, but it's about how do we deal with things when it's happened and what measures do we have in place. That's what maybe if the authorities look at us want to see. What have we got in place? And we have a very good policy which has been worked on. I appreciate at the moment I am sharing with you our current policy, which is due for review in March 2025. And we'll be reviewing that shortly. And what we'll do for all of you who've come to this training, when that review happens and the new policy is brought out with some new changes and modifications, which we appreciate does need to be made, we will send you a sheet with those modifications as well as the new policy. So you'll be able to know what those changes are and you'll be able to speak to those changes. So even though we're not training you on the brand new one now, we're training you on the current one, if that makes sense. Yeah. Okay.
So there's just two Bible texts. There's more, but the Bible does speak, even on lesson quarterly, over the past few weeks, we know that God is a God of justice. And it says here in Deuteronomy 10:18, he defends the cause of the fatherless and the widow and loves the foreigner residing among you, giving them food and clothing. And then again in James, religion that God our Father accepts as pure and faultless is this, to look after orphans and widows in their distress. And God expects us to be looking out for people in distress, for those people who can't look out for themselves and speak up for themselves.
Amen. Amen. And this text here as well, very key text, Proverbs 31:8-9. Open your mouth for the mute, for the rights of all who are destitute. Open your mouth, judge righteously, defend the rights of the poor, defend the rights of the needy. So you see, when we're talking about safeguarding, it is a very biblical thing. Part of our principles of what we believe are made up.
1 sec.
Yes. Sorry, there was a question. Okay. No, somebody's coming in. I can see there's a lot in the chat. Can I just ask our team, is there anything we need to be aware of at the moment? Or is it just people generally just acknowledging they're here?
Yes, Pastor John, there was just someone, I can't recall exactly who now, someone who attended a safeguarding training last year, 2024, and they were asking whether they are supposed to stay here today.
Okay, right. If you've attended in the last 2 years, and obviously 24, that's only a year ago, you are welcome to stay because it can sometimes renew things. We won't be required to do, we're not going to require you to do a retest. There is going to be an exam at the end of this, which we'll be sending you to exams. We'll tell you a little bit more about that. But you won't be required to do that. But, you know, because you already have your certificate. So that's lasts you for 2 years. So you are covered in that sense. But you're welcome to stay. You're not obliged to, but you're welcome to if you've attended before. Yeah. Was that it, Pastor Luca? Was there anything else?
That's what I've been able to spot at this time, yes.
Yeah. Yes, I can see somebody said about the annual training. We always have this training annually, but the requirement is every 2 years. If you haven't been, you need. It's more for information for those of you who are coming annually. But ideally, the certificate is last year for 2 years, just like your DBS. It's the same DBSs now. It used to be free. We've reduced it to 2 now. It's every 2 years. that's a mandatory requirement. That's what we're saying. Yeah. Okay. So here, the policy really seeks to reduce, I want to stress that word, reduce incidents. It doesn't say it's going to stop it, but reduce incidents of abuse and the duty of care or safety failures by procedures for best practice. And basically, I guess, as designated safeguarding persons or lead, along with your pastor, you will evaluate all of the concerns and refers these on when needed. It is crucial you do respond without delay, because delaying could really be the difference between life or death sometimes of a child or an adult at risk. If you have concerns, talk to your responsible person or designated safeguarder. That's the guidance the policy does give us. So we're going to go first. If you get your policies now, yeah, the other one's going to ask you to do. So get your policies out or on the screen or on your own screens.
So if you turn to page 2, you should see there it does say a policy statement, and there are a number of statements there, and you should be able to find this one right on the very top. It says Seventh-day Adventists affirm the dignity and worth of each human being, and we will not condone, neglect, bullying, or any form of physical, sexual, emotional, or spiritual abuse of any individual, whether in the church or in the community. So these are the statements that, as a church and as BUC, this is what we stand for. And you will notice this one here, which is on the end, which was new to the policy when it was updated. And this one says here, the church will respect differences in gender, sexual orientation, culture, race, ethnicity, disability, and religious beliefs, and appreciate that all individuals are of value to the community of faith.
So can I just clarify here? There is the general statement, which the policy, you read it at the top underneath the policy statement. Hopefully you can see that in your booklets, yeah? But to that statement, there are 8 key points, subheadings, and that's something we need to familiarize ourselves with. I know we had a discussion last week when we was this. I'm just stressing that. So yes, it is true. There is a summary, like at the top of a statement, but all of these points here are part of that statement. Does that make sense? Yeah. So you don't separate them or just say, well, one's it off. It's the whole thing. All these points are really key, and you need to understand those. And maybe what's probably good sometimes in our churches is maybe highlight some of these things, because that is what we stand for. This is the building blocks of our safeguarding. Yeah. Okay.
And I think it's important to recognize the fact that no one is going to be asking you to agree with someone's sexual orientation or someone's religious belief. We're not asking you to agree, but what the Bible does teach is that we should love people. So that's something we want to make clear.
Yeah.
But the fact is, we have to show respect to people from all different walks of life, and that's what this policy is basically showing.
And the other thing I just wanted to highlight before I forget as well, this is the British Union policy. Now, you've only got the English side of it. It's a bit thicker when you have all of it, but it does cover Ireland, Scotland, Wales as well. And each of those countries has its own guidance. So we are training on the British version, the UK version, and we are governed by the NSPCC's definitions of signs of abuse. That's the governing body which helps us implement the policies. This is where we get our guidance from. So just so you understand, that is where we are sort of coming from in that sense.
So what is safeguarding?
Okay, so safeguarding on page 2, as it says here underneath, it says safeguarding covers the specific actions we take to protect our children and adults at risk. I guess the local church has a responsibility to let children, adults at risk know of their right to talk or speak about to an independent person or service, and that independent support is available for them. And in terms of our actions, the information should be included from time to time in our church bulletin. So we should try and let people know what their rights are, what they can do. You with me? We should have posters up. You put posters up in the toilets. Let people know where they can go if they need help. I know it's difficult if you're in a rented building, but then you can maybe use your WhatsApps, your media. There's ways you can do it, because I know we don't all, but when we have our own church, certainly put posters. There's some B&C ones we can send you to guide. If you need help with that, if you really are struggling and you need things printed, come and talk to us. Let me see what I can do for the department to help you. I don't want everybody coming, but I'm hoping we want to help you, but we can certainly send you the email versions out, which are guides that you can use. And obviously what I'm looking to do now, I'm in this new role as well, I am going to be setting up a safeguarding committee over the next couple of months. We've already talked to a couple of people already, so that's going to happen soon. And we're going to be looking at this, and this might be something we will look at. But of course, ideally, you can use the templates that are there and design your own posters, because it's important that the church know not only who the officers are, but they know where to go if there's an issue. Yeah, does that make sense? Hopefully.
I think the main thing to really bear in mind is that safeguarding is proactive. And it says there, which means we take the necessary steps to protect children and young people before anything happens to them. So if I was to ask you, what does it mean to be proactive? And what do you think we mean by take action before anything happens? There's a word I'm thinking of here. Do you just want to just shout out? What does that mean to be proactive and do and take action before?
Prevention, preventative work.
Okay.
In way of what?
Yeah.
In the way of doing what? What would you do?
So raising awareness amongst everyone within the church so that they can spot the signs and act upon them.
Yes, I'd say yes to that. Sorry?
I think taking care of making sure that you know where the children are. For example, if they are going to the toilet, they are accompanied by an adult or somebody responsible in the church, so that you can actually make sure they are well protected when they're in the church premises.
Good.
To be vigilant also, to know what's going around at all times.
Good.
It's also preventing harm. I think that's what proactive I understand it to be.
Yes.
Yes.
And the thing is, we go to a lot of churches, and I remember we went to a church, and there was a door to the car park, which was generally quite open, and the toilets were right just opposite that door, which was away from the main sanctuary. So what I'm saying is, anybody could walk in from that car park and walk straight into those toilets. So if a child is sent to the toilets, there's nobody around, because it was quite away from the main sanctuary. So like you said, taking the necessary steps, but also I'm thinking of a risk assessment. So if you are, for example, taking your pathfinders away on a camping trip just for the weekend, you don't wait until you get there before you check the site. You check the site, you check the ground, you check if there's going to be water nearby, because you don't want your tent being put up too close to that water. You have to do all these things before you get to that site. But bear in mind, you want to prevent as much things taking place. So that's why you would assess your building, assess your group, the number of adults to the number of children, etc., etc. Okay.
Yeah. And I would also draw your attention to page 51 and 52 and 53 of your of your policy booklet, which gives some little bit more information on risk assessments and assessing it. And because again, I've sent you the Word page, you can actually assess that and start working with that. What I would also say to you is we're trying to help you with this safeguarding. Now, when you go on to the NEC website, you will go on to departments. In the past, you would have gone on to Department of Family and gone to safeguarding. I think you can still get through it that way, but we've actually created a safeguarding page now. So when you go onto the website, you will actually go straight on there, and all these appendixes with all your risk assessment reporting concerns, they're all on there. So you can just download them as you need them and use them. So I've really tried to make it as easy as possible, and I'm continuing to add things to that page as they come on. So somebody said they don't have a booklet. Cheryl, is it? Yep. Okay. But the booklet has been sent out on the chat. We did email it this morning. Now, it could be that more people have even read it since I did that at 8 o'clock, because I can see there was about 157. There's now 262. So yes, it probably is that some of you haven't, but you now have to get it on the chat at the end. I'm hoping everybody has registered their email. I noticed there was a couple of people before who hadn't given us their email address. Now, if you haven't, you need to send that. I don't know, Sister Maxine, can you put, I think you put the family email address in, so family@necadventist.org. Please send us that, because that's important, because we cannot contact you without your email addresses. So that is, and they've got to be correct as well. Sometimes in the past, we've had people who have emailed, put an address in. When we send out the stuff, it doesn't go anywhere. So if you've not heard from us after a while, you need to come back to us. But I'll explain a little bit more about that when we come to the test side. But it's very important we do have it. But we have put it in the chat so you can download the policy, because it's just helpful to have that while we're doing this training now.
Yes, Pastor, I have been posting it to persons who have requested. I'm in the process of, doing it now. And yes, as long as you post your email address, I'll try as best as possible to do that.
Thank you so much, Sister Campbell, for doing that, because that's really important, because I know this will help. So was there another question?
Okay. So
thank you, Pastor. Well received.
Thank you. Good. Okay, so the question comes to us, what is abuse? Now, basically, abuse, as it says here, is a violation of an individual's human rights or civil rights by another person or persons through the misuse of power and control. And that abuse can come physically, and it can come emotionally through manipulation. It can come mentally. So it's anything what really demonstrates a power or control over somebody that is a misuse of their position and oftentimes, sadly, as we know from our histories, abuse unfortunately comes from within those people we know and trust more. So yeah, that basically is what we're saying there.
So I'm going to have a look at a definition here, and you'll see the definition on page 3. It says a child or young person. The term child relates to any person under the age of 18. And your teenager, as big as they'd like to think that they are, if they're under 18, they are still classed as a child. And I think it's true, you have to start giving them more responsibilities, but ultimately they are still under the age of 18. And in the UK, they are classed as a child. And the thing is, we have to remember that, their frontal lobe has not fully developed yet. It doesn't fully develop until the age of 25, if not sometimes a little older. So they cannot be relied upon to make really sound, clear moral judgments, because they're not a full adult yet.
That is true. And again, on page 3 on your policy, if you go to it, you will see you've got some sections of there. It talks about abuse, forms of abuse, but then it talks about children and young people. qualifying what Donovan's saying, up to age 18, looks at adults at risk. Those are things you need to be aware of, yeah? Okay, so as it says, part of the child protection is protecting minors under 18 from harm, but bear in mind their frontal lobe doesn't develop to 25, so being there for everybody, preventing damage to their health and development, and ensuring they're surrounded by safe and effective care. So that's basically those 3 points are showing what real child protection is really all about and the importance of child protection. Question is here asked, who is an adult at risk?
So here it's got a person 18 years or over who is unable to safeguard their own well-being, property, rights, or other interests. A person affected by a disability, mental disorder, illness, or physical or mental infirmity.
Which is important. Then the third point, if another person's conduct is causing the adult to be harmed, or a person is engaging or likely to engage in conduct which causes or is likely to cause self-harm. So that's another factor we need to take in consideration when we're looking at adults at risk. And also bear in mind, we do say this later down, is you may be, as an adult, everything's okay at this moment in time. You can have trauma in your life. And while you're going through maybe that bereavement or that real anxiety or stress, that could make you an adult at risk because, you know, things could just change in your circumstances. As it says here, a person may have suffered from bereavement or struggling with the impact of past abuse.
Yes.
Sorry, there's there.
So I think this is where we say sometimes that the family ministries or other people in the church can be looking out for people. We all deal with, I think bereavement is a big one. We all deal with bereavement in different ways, and some people cope with it and are able to, you know, carry on with their lives. Some people take a long time to come to terms with the loss of a loved one and may stop eating, may stop looking after themselves. And of course, this person then is at risk of being taken advantage of. And this is where we can perhaps come alongside somebody who knows the individual, can come alongside and support them and help them through that time of trauma that they are experiencing. Okay, so we have a time now where we're going to be going into our breakout room. In fact, is that the right place? Yeah, that is the right place, isn't it?
Well, I need to set them up actually, unless our team can help me do this. Breakout
because
rooms.
I think we said we're going to do that there. Or did we say we was going to jump and do something else?
No, they can do it.
Is that there? Yes, let's just check. Okay, we're just having a quick look here. Because I think, did you want to do your other stuff here? Or was it later down?
It was later down.
Was it later down? Okay.
Right.
So what we needed you to do then, so it says here, sorry, we're with you in a minute. It says here to write down a clear definition of your abuse. So we are going to be giving you a slide in a minute with an abuse on it. We want you to take a note of your room number. So you've got to take a note of your room number when you get put into your room, and you need to then, according to the next slide, write down a definition of your abuse, a concise definition of your abuse. And we then need you to write down some indicators. What would you be expecting a person to be? How would they be behaving if they were suffering from emotional abuse or physical abuse? What would you be expecting to see from that individual? So that is what we're going to need you to do. So what we
I'm just thinking, guys, because we've got a lot of you on. We was going to have 12 rooms, but I know some of you. We want to make sure we've got a leader for each group. Now, I've seen a couple of names who've experienced people. I see Mark Palmer was on. I saw Paul Ellison. Yeah, it would be good. Yeah, it would be good to have some main people just to make sure for those who are new, some people are a bit more experienced in the group. So if you want to identify yourselves maybe on the chat, so as our team are assigning you to those rooms, they could, we could actually at least put somebody more experienced in it. So at least, that discussion is going. Does that make sense? Yeah. So if you could perhaps make yourselves known, then that would help. That would probably help. Yeah.
Or if you have a problem, if you come out of the room and come back to the main room, then we can always put you into a different room. If you feel there's too many people who have got that experience in your room, you can come out and we can put you in another room.
We can put you in another room, yeah.
So if you could take a photo of this slide, I think it would be helpful because then you could just be clear on what we need you to do in your room. So we're asking for two things, a definition and possible indicators that you would expect to see. So that's take a quick photo. And I'm assuming you've done that. So I'm going to go to the next slide. So for this next slide, again, you'll need to take a photo because depending on which room you are in, that will be the abuse that you need to work on. So if you take a photo of this slide, and then if you're in room 9, you will be working on child trafficking. If you're in room 5, you'll be working on spiritual abuse. So if you could just take that note of your room. I'm assuming everyone would have hopefully have done that. If you haven't done that, let me know now because I will move on. Everybody move.
Ask a quick question. So I mean, I did the training last year, and I'm just waiting to ask a question around DBSs. So do you want me to email that and come off, or when everybody goes?
All right, we are coming up to the DBS section soon. Once we finish this section, we are actually going to come. Are you the one which said you've got to leave at 1:30?
No.
Okay. Somebody said they did their training last year. I'll just repeat that. If you've done your training last year, you will not need to do a test. The training covers you for 2 years in terms of the legal requirement to do a retest. So we will be doing a test at the end. But if you just put on there, I did my training last year, that's it. You won't be required because you've already got your certificate. It's only every 2 years. You mandatory have to come. We encourage you to come yearly for a refresher, but you only have to mandatory do the test and get a new certificate at the end of every 2 years. The same with DBSs now. DBSs have to be done every 2 years as opposed to every 3 years. That's the change which has come. So that's important that we officers, yeah?
The DBS.
Okay. But we will be doing that. Yes, it will come after
later.
this. Yeah, it
That's
will be
later.
coming later. It will be coming later, yes. So if you have an urgent question, you're having to go quite soon. I know some said 1:30, then yes, you by all means can interact on the chat. We will look at those at the end and come back to you so long as we've got an email. So maybe you want to do a direct question or just interact, so long as we should have your email anyway if you've registered. So we can do that because we are trying to combine both at the moment, but just give you guys an overview. So hopefully this has helped. Or maybe if you want, if we make a note of your name, you can also stay in the main hall now because we'll be here. So we'll be able to have a little chat if you have to go. So that's an option as well. So yes. So has everyone taken that photo? Yeah. Okay. I'm just wondering, out of our team, we've got Luca and that. I wonder, are you confident to do the rooms for us? I don't know if Pastor Luke or Pastor Simon, because I think I tried to do it and I would have to sort of drop everybody in. So I don't know if you were able to set up 12 rooms and then we just manually put people in. Yeah, is that okay?
I don't need to go in the rooms as well. I did my training last year, so I might as well stay. Yeah.
Okay. Right. So Diana, the thing is, Diana, you could probably help somebody else, though. That is the thing.
So we're going to give you 15 minutes in your groups. So you should be coming back. We will give you was it the 1 minute?
Yeah.
So you're just after 11 o'clock. So you have until 11 o'clock to complete that task with your members in your group. Okay. So
do you want me, Pastor Luke, are you able to set up the rooms, or do you want me to open the rooms? I've set up the rooms. We can, yeah. Can you see them there?
Yes.
Okay. Are you able to assign people then, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
We'll do it right now.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I've come into this training. I did it last year. And I'm a child social worker. I really haven't got time today to be on this training, to be honest. So
that is fine. You're not required to come, it's optional. Yeah. If you've been on this, are you DBS though? Are you a DBS person?
Yes, I'm a child social worker.
Right. Are you doing the DBS side as well? Are you DBS clerk?
No.
No, okay, right. Because obviously we're doing something for the DBS clerks as well with this. But yes.
My DBS clerk, the DBS clerk is on. I know she's on.
That's okay. Yeah.
All right.
You are free to go,
Thank you.
I really information. We did say this when we sent it out. Obviously, if anybody's done training before, within 2 years you're not required. If you want to come for a refresher, that's fine. I'm not telling you away, but yes, you're correct. You're not required. And
thank you very much. Thank you. All right.
Continue to do what you're doing.
Yes, thanks. Bye-bye.
God bless. Okay, so we're going to see who's left.
Pastor, can I just ask, in terms of the DBS, the DBS that you have must be for your church, not your work.
Right. Sorry. Yes. Right.
I noticed that lady kept saying she was a child social worker, but you still need to have your church DBS.
You have to have your church DBS. Yes. That is true. Everybody needs, the requirement is that everybody needs to have a church one, which is one thing we're going to be mentioning in the training now as well. It's not sufficient to have just one outside for your work. You with me? Yeah. So I'm glad you brought out Grace. Definitely.
How long is the DBS for?
Again, the DBS lasts for 2 years. It has to be renewed every 2 years.
Thank you.
Pastor, I'm still here. I've not been allocated a room. My name is Blessed.
Okay. I think we're doing that now. Let's see.
Okay. I can see the numbers are dropping.
The numbers are slowly dropping. It's quite a lot.
Okay.
It's quite a lot we're having to do. I don't know if anybody else can help us with this as well. Let me see if I can do it out people.
Pastor, please allocate me in a room. I'm still outside. I'm still waiting as well.
Your name
still
is
waiting as well.
Margaret.
You need to just be patient. You're waiting.
Yeah, I'm also waiting. There's quite a few of us.
Can we always wait a second, please? Just give us a chance just to get this thing sorted out. Just be patient. You get there eventually to the promised land.
You can actually join one by looking at the bottom bar. So you can put yourself in a breakout room. You go to the bottom bar, it says at the bottom right, breakout room. If you click that, you can join a number room.
In future, to make it seamless and very easy, if you just set in the room automatically, maybe 3 people in a room, 10 people in a room, it will just automatically do that within 1 minute. So instead of manually sending it through, which will take more time.
Yeah, the reason why we did this is for the reasons, but let me see if I can just do this now.
Hello, sorry, are we in the groups now? Because I got cut off because of the Wi-Fi.
Oh, we're just assigning people now. We're just assigning some
Okay.
more.
All right, that's fine.
Hi, Elder John. It's Ruth.
Hi,
I think
Ruth. Yes.
Hi, how you okay? I think what's good about the fact that people can choose a breakout room is if you have a look at the list that you have to take a picture of, and you can see the different abuses that you're going to be allocated to, you might want to choose one that would be good for your learning. Because you might go in a room that you kind of feel quite comfortable with and understand a
Yeah,
lot about, but there might
yeah,
be another one where you could really gain a lot. So I've just had a look at the
yeah.
list, had a look at your picture, and think, okay, I'll go into this one. So I think that's a
Yes.
really good way to
Yeah,
do it as
so,
well.
so we've allowed all of you to choose now. So by all means, pick.
Pastor, sorry, I think Ruth, good idea, Ruth. The issue is that everybody choose number 10, number 11. That means you have overpopulated rooms and some rooms empty completely. So it's about getting kind of a balance between all the rooms. Otherwise, everybody chooses room number 5 and number 6. You have a top heavy in one room and nobody potentially on other rooms. So I think really probably assign people as in numbers to each room, so it's a balanced number in every room.
Right.
As long as it's still dropping, we're getting there.
So, sorry, Pastor John. Good morning. I did my training on the 6th of February 2022. So, do I need to be on this training as well?
22, yes, yeah, you do.
All right, okay, no worries. Yeah.
We've updated the policies twice. Yes.
All right,
Yes.
no worries. Thank you.
Well,
Appreciate it.
you do need to be, yeah.
Hi, Pastor. My view with regards to safeguarding is there is always something new which comes up. Whether you did a training last year, there is something new, there is something to learn. I don't know, but I think it's important that everyone who is in the safeguarding section should renew or attend training so that they can have an update information. So yeah, that's my view, because there is always something new. There is always something new. Thank you.
Yes, so that's why we say to you, you're welcome to come in. Here we have it.
We are getting there slowly, Pastor John. As you can
Yes,
see,
I'm trying to help as well.
over 260 people, so it takes some time to do all of them manually.
I wonder if
We're almost there.
Yeah, if there's a way we can actually perhaps put them all in now. I don't know if it's possible, but maybe not. Should have perhaps done it when I first did it. But yeah, there's a lot more people than what we anticipated, nearly 300, isn't there? It gives them the option to choose as well. So some of them could have helped by offering to go in. But never mind. Let's see if we can.
there is a request that while we are waiting, if the groups could be again displayed and their specific tasks. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pastor Roman. I need to authorize you as well. I didn't realize you was on. Actually, let me try and find you.
I'll just do that now.
We'll do that now, actually. We'll do that now.
So the task was...
Can't see the participants now.
The task...
Lost Pastor Roman here.
This was the task. Can you see that? There's two things: to define the actual abuse. So write down a clear definition of the abuse, and then write down some possible indicators you would expect to see. What are some possible indicators you would expect to see? Okay, is everybody happy with that? If you take a photo, because I'm going to come out of this screen. Yeah? Everybody happy?
Pastor Roman, I'm trying to find you on here.
I'll come out of that screen now.
To give you a hosting right, sorry. I'm trying to find you. I can't find you at the moment. Okay, let's see if we can move people.
Hi, sorry, I got kicked out. Can you put me in room 6?
We have closed all the rooms now, sorry.
Have you? All right, okay, thank you.
Okay, so we're just going to let everybody come back in and then welcome everybody back.
That time went too quick, brother Pastor Francis.
Yeah, we had a lot.
I know some of you probably went in later as well, but
exactly. So just sitting, time finish already. My word.
The idea is just to get a little bit of discussion anyway, and we're going to try and minimize the sharing now a little bit because of the numbers we have. There will be another opportunity we give you when I talk to the DBS people, but what we're going to do for that, we'll probably automatically just assign you for speed, and then people who are DBS clerks, that means you have to actually issue DBSs to the members. You've been authorized to do that. We'll ask you to just exit yourselves out so we can have a chat on that. So that's probably the best way, because there's a larger number, a lot more than what we was anticipating actually. So
I think a lot of leaders, not just the safeguarding, a lot of leaders, department, head of department join it.
Yeah, which is good. It's good that you've come and you can at least experience it as well. So that is
Excuse
good.
me, I don't need to be rude. Sorry, you know the safeguarding and DBS, is it all conjoined or is it two separate training?
No. It's all one. So we're going into that in a bit. That's what we're saying. That's the next section we're going to do.
I have to go to work for 12. Can I leave or do I have to stay?
Well, what we're trying to do now is actually just finish off this section so we can start on that right now. That's what we're going to be doing. So if you can hang on, great. If not, you just have to email me your questions.
I don't want to miss out on any test or anything.
Well, the test will be given anyway, because the training was advertised till 2. So the test will be sent out anyway. Obviously, if people have to leave, then I'm afraid you'd either have to read your policy, read the stuff we send you, and hopefully have a go. That's all I can suggest. But Unfortunately, it was assigned to 2, so we can't really change those timings. We've actually shortened it, to be fair. It normally is till 4 normally. So, you know, we just have to work with this the best we can, but that's how we do it. But let us move on now. So I know some of you have had some discussion. So the other one, do you want to just quickly go through this, what you want to do, and then we can move on to the next section? Yeah.
So I think everyone's back into the main room. So what we will do now, we're just going to briefly just have a listen to some feedback. But what we need you to do, we're going to start with room 1.
2. You said 2 because the lady said she's going.
If you goes to 1 first, and then go to 2. But if you want to do 2 first,
do
we'll
2
do 2 because I think somebody needed to go then. So if you go to 2, and then we'll go back to 1, and then we'll just work through the rooms. So we'll just need you to just briefly tell us what your abuse was. Give us a very short, clear definition. And then we only want you to give us 3 points. So we know you would have perhaps discussed quite a few points, but we just want you to pick out your 3 top points of indicators for that abuse. So,
okay.
Sorry?
So I was in room 2. It's Ruth Thompson. I'm just speaking for our group. We had emotional abuse, and just to summarize, it's really when you
Can we see you, Ruth? I'm just trying to see.
I'm on camera. I've turned my camera on for this.
My pin and find you. Sorry, where were
Yeah,
you?
I can see
Oh,
myself.
now, Ruth. Yes, I can see you now.
Yeah. Okay. Hi. Yeah. So we had emotional abuse, and what we're saying really, this is not a physical abuse; it's a psychological abuse, where you've got somebody else controlling somebody, in a way that causes them to feel vulnerable, not be able to trust themselves, and really, it's psychologically wearing and bearing that person down, and using your power, depending on wherever your power comes from, to be able to feel that that person's not in control of their life. So that's really a quick summary. And how that looks for some people is the person will be very withdrawn oftentimes, and show a lot of lack of confidence in themselves, have low self-esteem. And as much as we talked about the person struggling to control their emotions, and that could either be looking very vulnerable in their emotions, but they could also look very aggressive in their emotions. And that aggression, we kind of pointed out, could be a way for them crying for help. But we could often read it as something else, so we need to be mindful of how we interpret people's reactions to how they experience emotional abuse.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much,
That's
Ruth.
very comprehensive.
That
Thank
was
you,
just
Ruth.
what we needed,
Thank
a
you.
nice, concise
Very
definition
good.
and just 3 points. Well
Good
done.
example for everybody.
So then if you can go to group 1, so if you can just show yourself, group 1. Sorry to...
I'm doing group 1, which was physical. So physical abuse, we defined it as anything that can cause physical harm or injury, and can be through various means like slapping, punching, medication, strangling, and things like that. So anything that can cause physical harm is physical abuse. And the possible indicators will be bruising, inappropriate clothing, like to cover the bruises, or heavy makeup and things like that. And behavior changes in behavior, especially in children.
Well done. Another very concise report.
Concise, very
Thank
good.
you. And then if we have room 3. Room 3, you were sexual abuse. Who's reporting for room 3?
Pick another one then.
Okay. Good morning. With sexual abuse, we defined it as any unwanted.
Can we see you, sister? Is that possible? Yeah.
Oh. No, can I ask someone else to present? Where I am, I can't have my camera on. Maybe someone else could do that from our group.
Hi, so we talked about sexual abuse, the definition being any the sexual advances that are non-consensual between one person and another vulnerable party. We also talked about potential signs of how it can manifest. So potentially the person or the child in question has bruises or bleeding, and also some of the behavioral changes. Maybe they can become more withdrawn, and that's what we talked about.
Okay, thank you for stepping in as well.
Thank you for stepping in. Yeah,
appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you.
So that's room 3 finished, and then room 4 was neglect.
Hi, yes, I'm Linda. I was part of room 4, neglect.
Yeah.
The definition of neglect, as per your policy, was saying it was a persistent failure to meet the child's basic physical and or psychological and emotional needs. And this was likely to result in impairment of the child's health and development. We also noted it could have happened not just once a child was born, but also during pregnancy. You can have problems with neglect as well, to mother maybe having substance abuse and so forth. But things that we might pick up might be that you may notice that person's clothes may be disheveled or dirty. They may have dry skin, poor oral hygiene. And as a church, the things that to pick up things like this, we need to be intentional in terms of interacting with people. So if you're hardly likely to notice things if you're far away from them, but if you're having conversations and asking sensitive questions, subtly, you can quite often pick up these signs of neglect. But it may be difficult, and we did note there's a lot of overlap as well with other things like physical abuse, emotional abuse, things like that.
Very good.
Yeah, no, I think very concise. Yeah. Okay.
So number, so we've done 4, so we've got 5, room 5, spiritual.
Spiritual abuse, and we have a very active group which gave excellent examples. With regards to the definition, we had a few that was put forward, but the lovely summary of a definition was the misuse of religious belief, authorities, practice to control, manipulate, and harm others. So we looked at that as encapsulating a number of the other definitions that had been put forward. And in relation to indicators or signs, when somebody's voicing distorted perceptions of God, they may be hard on themselves, hard on other people, very negative, distrusting, blaming, very judgmental. These could be signs of that in terms of what they've been perceived and been receiving themselves. Also, people who are very, very quiet, especially in contrast where they've been quite voice, and outgoing, etc. But suddenly they're withdrawn. They're not speaking that much, and it may be in relation to fear that may be being imposed upon themselves in certain religious beliefs. Contrast to that is blind deference. They're not even questioning anything at all. Anything that they hear, and they're just accepting of it, which leaves them to be very vulnerable. Especially the examples here was of the prosperity gospel. One sign may be a very, very wealthy and rich preacher of the congregation, and very poor members of the congregation as well. A sign of abuse. Spiritual leaders who may be overlapping this may be in relation to spiritual sexual abuse, using their authority to do that. And then there was another example of where where couples, one may be a non-believer and one may be a believer, and the non-believer is just belittling the believer, and that could impact upon them. And then finally, self-loathing and depression that could come out of being labeled as being demon possessed when nothing of the sort is there. And so those are just a number of examples of the abuse that was mentioned.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, it's a very good one. I mean, you know, obviously anything to do with coercion, anything to do with manipulation, that is all part of it, as you say. That's all part of it. And religious abuse, I always say it's not so much what we say, sometimes it's how we say it as well. That is also a factor. So thank you, Paul. That was very well summarized, that one. Yes.
So it's financial abuse,
financial
room
abuse.
6. Room 6, financial abuse.
I don't mind sharing.
Thank you.
The definition we got as financial abuse is when someone is withholding money or unfairly distributing money that might be rightfully theirs. Possible indicators could be turning up with no money for food, asking others to borrow money, a lack of savings, poor presentation or hygiene, begging and stealing, always working, but then they've got like nothing to show for it, a lack of care or support, and put always tired because they might have to walk a lot instead of being given money for like bus fare or the train or the taxi.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you.
And like all, as you say as well, you know, again, manipulation comes into it sometimes, always asking. Unfortunately, the financial abuse can happen a lot, particularly with our older members in church. They sometimes feel pressured that they've always got to help. You know, the church isn't a bank, bear that in mind. It's there for praying one another, but it's not there to meet everybody's needs all the, you know, and we have to be careful. That's why the Bible warns against excessive borrowing. But there's a lot happens in church, and that's where it does happen sometimes, and we just need to be mindful really and protect our older. I remember as a minister, I had you know, I've experienced where, you know, one of the members have rang me saying they're constantly being asked, don't mind helping now and again, but it's a constant because they have a little bit of funds, you know, you know, so we have to make sure we're protecting those, don't we? And it's about balance. It's about balance. It doesn't mean we can't help one another, but it's about being a balance as well. So all of that, a lot of these abuses are in your, you want to move to,
Yeah,
what we
so-
just to do one more, yeah?
Yeah, so room 7, it's modern slavery.
And if we can't go for all of them, we could just, yeah.
Yeah, room 7, we
yeah.
we talked about modern slavery, someone being exploited by others for personal gain. We talked about a person's abuse of freedom, not being able to move around, indicators where someone looking withdrawn, someone not forthcoming. Also, we talked about children in this scenario as well. We talked about indicators could be aggression, person could be looking bruised. We talked about people not definition, not receiving payment for wages, lack of freedom of movement, personal items like passports and those things being taken away from them. These are the things that we was talking about for modern slavery, and there were many other things were thrown in as well.
Definitely.
Thank you. Okay, room 8, radicalization.
Yes, I'm doing radicalization. We said radicalization was the process of indoctrinating or manipulating a person to hold extreme beliefs that can result in harm to an individual or group of people. We said so it's something that could be social, religious, political, ideological messages in any medium. And people can be forced or coerced into the views, albeit it could start with subtle behaviors, but then progress to things more extreme. And importantly, that people can feel as if they're doing something for the good of certain people or country or religion. And we said the definitions are that what the indicators you might see are that it's an element of disassociating with what you might see as normal groups, and mixing with more strongly ideological groups. And people can see a change in their lifestyle, maybe their clothing or conversation or their friendships, and in fact wearing symbols that identify them and reinforce their allegiance to another group. And you might well see emotional and behavioral change.
Okay, thank you. Group 9, child trafficking.
Yes, group 9. We explained child trafficking as an illegal act of recruiting, transporting, or harboring children for exploitation. We also said something about it's involving forcing or deceiving children into begging, labor, or sexual exploitation. And we highlighted that traffickers often control victims through threats, violence, and false promises. So we moved to the indicators and we highlighted physical indicators, signs of physical abuse like bruises, burns, cuts, scars, untreated injuries, or anything that may suggest violence or mistreatment. And we talked about malnourishment, poor hygiene, exhaustion and fatigue, untreated medical conditions. And then later, we spoke about the child being restricted to have education. So I think we mentioned a lot of things, but with time, I think this is what I could.
Yeah,
Thank you so
you're all
much.
doing so well. Very proud of you guys.
Okay.
Good job.
710, child sexual exploitation.
Hi, so in room 10 we talked about child sexual exploitation. So child sexual exploitation is a form of child abuse where an individual or group coerces, manipulates, or forces a child into sexual activity or in exchange of something that the child wants or needs, such as money, gifts, or affection. And this exploitation can occur in various forms. It could be online, interactions, grooming, and direct abuse. And we linked it to other different forms of abuse like trafficking and physical abuse. So indications were inappropriate sexual behavior, so like changing in clothes and having knowledge of sexual things that might not be age appropriate, and secret communication. So in talking to older members or any age, or being online and talking to people that might not be appropriate for them, and like going toileting, social activities and camps where they're having secret talks, unexplained gifts and money, so receiving gifts, just an increase in money expenditure and being seen in with flashy cars and expensive things like that, as well as physical signs like abuse, injuries and trauma as well.
Okay, thank you. Room 11, female genital mutilation.
We defined it as a practice involving the partial or total removal of the external female genitalia for non-medical reasons. Basically being a violation of someone's rights. And some of the risks that you come up with, we talked about the psychological effects as well as the physical effects of that practice. We discussed the culture, the religious or social beliefs that come up with this. So there's a big area of discussions we had, but also just trying to understand this horrid practice, and with other ways of trying to really fight it if possible.
Yeah, I will just add it is illegal in the UK, and anybody who's associated with this or carries out this, it is 14 years in prison apparently, and a fine or both. And you know, there's literally 60,000 girls aged from 0 to 14 in England and in Wales born to mothers who've undergone this procedure. And sometimes it's, you know, babies. So a woman, when she, you know, gets married, she might not even know when she's married that she's had this procedure done. So there are a lot of serious side effects. Yeah, very serious one, that. And if we go to our last one then, room 12, organizational abuse.
Who's doing that one? Room 12? Oh, yes. Is it yes? Charlie, you need to unmute. Sorry, that's all. Just unmute yourselves. You unmuted them. Oh, thank you. Good. Yeah, you know, unmute again. You did it once and then you just need to unmute again. Sorry. Yes, you're unmuted now.
So room 12, we're talking about church organization abuse. And actually, we've just realized the church organization abuse can be all the abuse we've just discussed from point 1, room 1 to room 11. And also, we also talked about the way we can identify the church organization abuse or the organization abuse is by identifying any bullying, or the board members can see if there's any financial abuse, if there's any grooming, power abuse, or neglect from our church members. By just, we know each other at church, how people dress, or how they communicate. Is really an inclusive of all the forms of abuse. We did go further, and also like we have people from different ethnicity. If people start having fun with how you pronounce things, it could be a form of abuse. So, and also we talked about children not being included in for example, if it's Pathfinder, having like some children are being left behind, it could be form of abuse. So ours was more broader than.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, thank you so much. And of course, as I know most of you probably are aware, between pages 4 and top end of 11, you know, a lot of these things are covered. They're not exhaustively covered in the book, but they are there. And it's important that you probably spend some time at church discussing these things, maybe in AY time, you know, having those discussions to see how we can manage these things. How can we protect our vulnerable, and how can we minimize the incidents, particularly when we've got our Pathfinder groups and different things going on. What things can we put in place, and sometimes being aware of it is the start, and that's what we ask you to do. So we could share our PowerPoint again. Hopefully it will come up. Yes, I think it should have come now. So you've actually done that section. So what we're going to just do on now, we've just moved on. Categories of abuse, as you can see, some of them are listed there. Page 4 to 11. It's as I mentioned, it's in the book there. It's not exhaustive, but this is, I guess, I would say a starting point for our discussions. Now, signs of abuse. You know, of a child or teen may be at risk of another child, seeks out company of a younger children and spends an unusual amount of time with them rather than with their peers. So, you know, you can notice that sometimes, you know, in the Pathfinders, Sabbath schools, various things. What is the interaction between our children? And sometimes we're finding now that sometimes abuse has happened where older children have been looking after younger children. You with me? So this is why these things need to be monitored as well. You know, as it says, takes children to secret places, tells you they do not want to be alone with a child. Those are signs if a younger child is being a little bit edgy, or a group of children, or becomes anxious, you know. So page 6 and 7, these are some things you can sort of look out and be thinking about. But I am a little concerned because I know sometimes we have older children looking after younger children. Really and truthfully, an older child shouldn't be really left on their own. We should have another person with them in the room. I can see some Dawn. Sorry, Dawn, you have your hand up. You had a question.
Yeah, it was just your first point on there where it said seeks out the company of younger children, and spends unusual amount of time with them. And I think it's about putting that in context, because you might have somebody who's got developmental delay, but do you know what I mean? So it's just putting the context around that with other factors that would lead to suspicions of abuse.
Yeah. That's a valid point, Dawn. It's not isolated on its own. Wouldn't say that. No, you're right. It's within the whole broader spectrum. Yeah. So I think that's a valid point you've made there. Yeah, definitely. Okay, so what you have also been sent this morning, and if you haven't, don't worry, it will be sent out again. There is a documentary report done by Church Protection in Religious Organisations, and this was an independent inquiry into child sexual abuse, and this was done back in 21. And it looked at religious organisations. Our church was not among those it looked at. Doesn't mean we, wouldn't have fell into this, and we could well be looked at now in the future. But at the moment, this was with other religious groups, including some Christian churches, but our church was not in that list at that particular time. And some of the findings they found is that there were some institutions which were morally failing children. Lessons like to forgive does not mean you need to be reconciled to the person. There were consequences to our actions, and we need to be held accountable for the actions. The other problem was a lot of the religious organizations, because they didn't want to bring name on their cultural organization, shame, I should say, they would basically not discuss it. And there was a lot of victim blaming, as it says here. And there was all those kind of things, trying to cover up, which is not really good, because in reality, sometimes we need to work with, they didn't want to also work with the organizations with them, like social services or things. They didn't want to. It was just, this is our problem. We want to keep this in the family. We don't want to bring the name of the family down, all that kind of thing. So it really is something we need to look at. So that report I'm sending you, it's interesting reading. It kind of makes us more aware of how we need to be more open about things, how we need to take some advice and work with organizations. Don't see some of these outside agencies as enemies. They're there to support us and help us. And sometimes families have real needs, and some of the issues which are happening, it's because of family issues which need some support on. You with me? Okay. I see Sister Maxine. Is any questions? Okay. Mark. Oh, Brother Mark, how are you doing?
Yes, thank you. I think this is probably the main part of our training, in that a lot of times we become very anxious about reporting to the authorities, whether it's local authority or the police, and that kind of paralyzes members of the church to actually taking the appropriate action. And it's an area that maybe we look at some point, how we help individuals in the church to be confident in making that report, because no one's ever harmed by somebody making a report. Even if it's a wrong report, it's better you're wrong and you did, but rather than do nothing and you were right, the problem stays there. And what the police state is that in some cases, their biggest problem was getting through the defense of the church at the name of the church, or because individuals were afraid of the ramifications by me saying this person, this person, this person. It's how we deal with our anxiety about reporting needs to be probably looked at as well.
Definitely. I'm going to say something, but I'll let Sean and I think Grace as well. Sean?
Yeah, thanks very much, John.
I've actually put the question also in the chat. I thought last week at the safeguarding training, we also spoke about the possibility, particularly in cases of child abuse and sexual abuse, well, even other types, there may be a possibility of, well, there should be a possibility of forgiveness, but there can't always be seen to be a practical opportunity or possibility of reconciliation. And I think that was something that we said was something that we accepted, but whereas I think you said something whereas the document you're showing on screen at the moment was saying that if you don't have reconciliation, did I mishear something or what?
Right. Okay. What the document is kind of saying is that, yes, of course, you know, to forgive does not always mean you need to be reconciled to that person because of the danger. You're with me? That's what it's saying. It doesn't mean you can forgive, but it doesn't necessarily mean, because it would be dangerous to be back in the situation. So in abuse, sometimes you have to stay away. And that is what it was really trying to say. And there are consequences. And the reason the leading on from that is that I guess there are consequences to our actions, and people do need to be held accountable. So yes, forgiveness can take place, but that doesn't mean there aren't consequences of that. So sometimes, for example, and maybe this might help to clarify it a little bit more, you may have a situation where you have a former paedophile who's coming to church. That paedophile will need to sign a care agreement, which is in your policies, with the social worker. And yes, if they are attending for some reason, they might not be able to be. They won't be allowed to be around where children are doing their programs. They probably have to sit with a deacon or something. You know, there'll be restrictions. So yes, they may be coming, but there are consequences. Does that make sense? And that's what sometimes has to happen. And so being forgiving doesn't mean we're going to put somebody in a situation where they're going to be put back into the problem they are. It's the same thing we say, even in family ministries. Our mantra, I guess, is to help families who are going through difficulties, help them come together, help them stay together. We want marriages to stay together. However, if somebody is in an abusive situation, even as, you know, counselors or even as family educators, we would have to say that you sometimes need to step out of that situation, even if it's for a time, because it's dangerous to your health, not to your health, but maybe to your physical well-being. So that you know, I guess it's getting that balance sometimes. It's not easy. I'm not saying it's easy.
No, I mean, the thing being is obviously people can be triggered even by the sight of that person sitting with a deacon. And even though there may be months and years that have passed, that person's going to potentially have to face that person who's the antagonist, as well as the fact that that antagonist will also have their family and friends in the church, who may then be putting pressure on the victim to, well, let them come to church, you know, let them come. And it can be a very, very, very problematic situation.
And I think, following on from what you've said there, I would also say there have been issues where cases have come, you know, the advice has been not to go back to the same church or whatever. You know, it has to be worked through. It really is a difficult situation when something happens, and unfortunately, we have to put certain measures in place. It's not about open doors. And as I think often you may hear us say as we're going around to churches now, maybe it was a bad example I used with Peter, but what I'm saying, people need to see with certain incidences in church is not a place where you can just come and abuse others, you know. So it needs to be almost shown to be unfriendly in that sense. I think we had also, Sean, if you're okay, Grace, was it Grace?
Yes, Pastor, we have about 5 hands.
Okay.
We have Grace.
Try and go to you guys as we.
Right, yes.
Yeah, Pastor, and it follows on for what yourself and Mark was saying. So I think, you know, where what the inquiry really focused on is where the churches are morally failing its members is not having a victim-centric focus, but far more focused on protecting the church. The church needs to be seen as a place of safety for all, and where victims feel that they can disclose what they're experiencing and that they are supported in that, rather than the church closing ranks to protect itself. So I think the conversations where we're much more openly talking about what is a safeguarding, what is abuse, etc., so that people recognize that actually if they come forward, they will be supported. I think that is so important.
And these are the kind of networks need to be set up. Thank you, Grace. I think that's really crucial what you've just been saying there. Wow, we've got loads of hands. Judith.
Good morning, everybody. I just wanted to ask the question in the chat. I'm not sure if it's answered as yet. Do we have a discretionary place where if you see something that you think could be aligned with any kind of the abuses that we've mentioned, that we can report it? So for example, at school, we have My Concern, there's various other platforms. Is the church invested in one of those platforms where you can just go online, put the date, put what you've seen, put who was involved? And if you think about it, if we're all doing that, wherever it's happening, it means that, okay, whoever's in charge, the lead DSL, can look and see that, okay, there's a chain of events happening here. A few people have said this, a few people have said that, and you can bring it all together and see what the picture is and then speak to those people in the appropriate ways. If we're not having that, everyone's open to a situation because you're seeing something and you don't know where to take it. And if you are taking it verbally to a DSL, how many times is that DSL hearing these things and how is it being recorded? That's my first statement and question. My second thing is, I agree with what I think it was Grace that spoke before me and said, the church is a place, obviously it's God's house. God's house is not above the law. And from my experience, what I've seen when abuse rises its head, unfortunately, in the church, it's almost like, okay, we have to protect our image to the world of what's happening into the church. We've all seen the news, we've all seen what's happening with the Church of England. Those things are happening because of years of hiding and hiding and hiding. And the abusers are almost held up over the people that are the victims. I'm so sorry, but when I've seen stories like if a woman or man has an affair or whatever, they've been disfellowshipped, they can go and join another church, but they're not in the church where the thing is happened. Why do we need the abuser to come to the same church where they've been abusing? Why can they not? They can still, obviously, we are not judge, jury, and sentence, are we? So that's up to God. Why can't they go somewhere else? And even if they don't have family, they would need to build up a fellowship somewhere else where they can go through the forgiveness process and change and be reformed and seek repentance. How can it be okay that the victim needs to now sit and see this person every day, every week at church or at prayer meeting or whatever? How is that okay?
No, I think you're making some really valid points. Was going to mention it, but since you mentioned it now, that's really good. I agree, we've not always had the best reporting strategy and logging information on individuals as we've had in the past. What I'm happy to say to you, with the BUC, we are looking at My Concern is going to become something we're going to be using in our conferences, and we're going to open that up, well, at least definitely the side of the community arm to the churches, that anybody can anonymously report something. Discussion is happening. I guess we need to work with the system and test it and see how it works, because there's already challenges already with those even doing DBSs and getting logged out and stuff. So we need to just work on this, but we need to look at, in the future, whether that will be made available to the safeguarding leads individually in the churches. But certainly as a conferences, we're going to be starting to use that, and you can work with us on that at the moment, and we'll open up the community arm so anybody can freely report. And like you say, the good thing about that program is you can be living in one area, something happens, it will track it, and everything comes together. We've never really had that before, but that's something, the church is we've just recently buying into that. So that should be opened up in the next hopefully month or a couple of months. That's going to be made available, and you will be getting.
Sorry, if something is reported and it's investigated and it's nothing, it's rather that it be investigated and it turns out to be nothing than we don't have any reporting system. We faff about of getting it and sorting out on who can use it and da. The issue is we just need a reporting system. The powers that be can look at it. If it turns out to be nothing, that's fine. But I'm really thinking that what you're saying about the community arm and all these different arms, I don't really understand that, because the point is that we have a reporting system. Who can use it? So the pathfinders, the DSL leaders in the church. If you're having any interaction with children or anyone else, you should be able to have it the same way we can scan to pay our tithes. The same way we should be able to scan and report something or phone a number. It shouldn't be open to just something.
Sorry, you probably misunderstand me. That's what I'm saying. That arm will be made available to everybody, so everybody will be freely able to report their incidents, and it will be logged. It will be logged. And as I say, as conferences, we will buying into this now. It's a new program, so please bear with us in the next few weeks. Some information will be sent out on that, but that system is very good, and the system is now going to be up and running. We've just been looking at it just before Christmas. We've just signed up to it, so it's something very new we're launching. The plan was to launch it in January, but it certainly should be launched by February, and this will now be made available for everybody to report on. And of course, you can come via the conferences as well for more detail. But we'll be talking to your individual DSLs privately about this as we get this training up and running. So this system, will be now in place, which is new. It's new. We've not had it before. So that's a good thing. Anyway, if we can move on, who was the next person?
Yes, Pastor. Before we move on, Pastor, I've been raising my hand for a long time.
I think we had Dawn, and then
we had Dawn, Ellen Misani, Samuel Jr., and then Christian, and then Marie.
So, yeah, we'll just let you make it as briefly as possible. Dawn,
in that order. Yeah, I'll be ever so quick. You've answered some of it, and I agree with what I think it was Grace was saying at the very, just before me. In terms of that reporting system, is that something? I'm just thinking, is that something that we'd have locally to report on? And then obviously we can report if there is a major safeguarding concern that needs reporting to the police, social care or what have you. There's still those processes in place. But in the interim, and this is the question that I wanted to ask you earlier on, in terms of like the, you mentioned a care support, say if somebody's come in and been an abuser, etc., and then there's certain conditions that they have to do, there's a care support form. In terms of GDPR, where are these forms being kept? Because I've done for my safeguarding team, which I will advertise widely to the churches. I've devised a safeguarding form, but in the interim, I've just said to not anonymize it because of GDPR reasons. So it's like initials, you know what I mean? So we can't go into all those details because of the GDPR. So how do you get around that in terms of the care support form and the other concerns? What are people doing?
Right. Okay. So obviously, as you probably realize, a lot of these forms are in your booklet, and we can now access them off the safeguarding website as well when you need them. We do advise that you keep currently the practice has been for churches to, mainly between the DSL and the pastor, really, you keep them either on a computerized thing or it's locked away, or it's kept from a local level. Because of this new reporting system we're working with at the moment, there will be maybe some other options. So that's what I'm saying. Just bear with us on that. But at the moment,
and I hear what you're saying, but in terms of locking away, there's the GDPR, so we can't put all the details on there, can we? And just lock them away in a cupboard or on a computer system because of for those reasons. That's why I was just raising it. Sorry, it's just to have some clarity on it.
Information. GDPR only means if it's irrelevant information. If it's relevant to the situation, that's the law of the GDPR. The GDPR.
Yeah, it's the saving of records, isn't it? We haven't. Where we haven't got anywhere locked where we can store things, or a computer where we can store those things. I'm just looking for solutions around that, because there may be somebody else who's in a similar position.
Okay, so you're saying you haven't got that? You haven't got?
No, we haven't got anything like that. We rent.
So what I'm saying, this new system that we're working on will help you. So you need to come and hello.
I'm with you. I'm here.
Sorry. I just saw my computer just drop. I thought I lost everybody. Yes, this new
I'm
system we are
thinking
working on.
in
This is
the interim.
I'm working on. We'll be able to answer some of those questions because we are working on something. And for your churches who haven't got stuff, we'll be talking. So I think maybe offline, not on this platform. We need to have.
Okay. All right, that's great. Thank you.
Something that's being worked on as we speak.
Lovely.
No, but I agree. It was not available in the past. But so let's have a conversation. Let's stay offline for that, and we can look how we can support you with that. Okay, so if we could go to the next one, which is
we now have Ella Dumisani, and then we have
right. Okay,
4 more persons.
right, Sister Maxine. Yeah, you call the next one then.
Okay, thank you for allowing me, to speak. Yeah, I was just saying, maybe the problem is, at churches, we need, to have open communication and trust to discuss things that are sensitive. People, they don't know each other. We just see each other at church. And then we don't spend time, people don't spend time to discuss things that are sensitive. That's my line of thought.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right. Can we move to Samuel? Yeah.
Yes, Pastor. In as much as I'm enjoying the interactive approach of the meeting, may I suggest, if it pleases Pastor, that we proceed to and have a special time for question and the suggestions, so that maybe some of the things that you would like to share with us will not be left out due to time constraint.
Yes, I'm glad you said that, because I'm looking at the time now. It's 12 o'clock. So, unless something's really pressing now, we'd like to sort of move on, and then you can put some of your questions in the chat, because I think the challenge we have in there's so many on this Zoom as well, and that is the thing. Because what I want to try and do now is just move on to this next section, so we can then wrap this up and then go into the DBS side as well. And my aim was to try and be there by 12, so it is 12 at the moment now. So maybe if we could, maybe at the end, if we get a little bit of time, we could then have more of a chat. Is that fair enough? Yeah?
Yes, Pastor.
Okay, then. Thank you. Right, so if we can just don't worry, just move on to this one. Okay, so we've looked a little bit about religious organizations. This next section here is just looking at keeping our church safe. Yeah.
So this slide basically says that perpetrators tend to target the voluntary sector because it is less regulated. As a church, we love it, don't we, when people come into our churches and we can see our churches grow, which is wonderful. And we get very excited. But the fact is, we don't know who these people are. So yes, we want people to come in, and yes, we can start giving them Bible studies, but we should be very cautious as to making those people around, be in charge of our children or our adults at risk, because we don't know these people yet. And some people, unfortunately, may come in with other agendas, is what basically I'm saying.
Okay, so the question is asked, what is grooming? Grooming is when someone builds a relationship of trust or emotional connection with a younger person so they can manipulate, exploit, and abuse them. That's on page 3 of your booklets. But the question is, does a groomer look like this picture here? That's the question we sometimes often pose. Do they come across in the way this is portrayed, or does a groomer come across differently?
So a groomer basically is people like you and me, various different walks of life. People you think you could trust, police officers, teachers, lawyers, everyday people. And the fact is that this is new to the policy, so we're going to just go through now some of the grooming tactics. And what they normally do is take some time to, they'll come into whatever setting you have there, the church or even an over 60s club, whatever it may be. They'll come in and they'll observe. They'll just be looking and deciding who would be somebody they'd like to target. They then gain trust. They gain trust by offering to support that individual with some need that they may have. It may be, for example, a single parent with some young children. Perhaps they would appreciate a lift to church. Perhaps they would appreciate some help with shopping, you know, and getting some shopping done. So they're fulfilling that need. They then start isolating the victim in the sense of they're the only person who they need now to give them the support. So other people, oh, you don't need them, I'll help you do that. So other people are then slowly cut out of their lives. Sometimes the behavior then leads to being sexualized, and then they maintain that control. And something we should bear in mind is that sometimes with grooming, it's something that can take place over a long period. So, you know, they may befriend the family and their young children. Perhaps, you know, when the children are 5 or 6, but maybe when those children start to get older, that's when the perpetrator might decide they might want to then, as it were, sexualize the behavior, because now that individual, the child in that family will trust that individual. And of course, now they've gained the trust, they then sexualize the behavior and then start threatening them, and all sorts starts to happen.
Yeah, and it's a mixture of things. And please refer to page 71 through to 73, which gives quite a good overview on grooming, on the types, the signs of grooming, if a child reveals abuse, all those things. So use that as your guide here, yeah?
So you'll see that we've just put some of the signs here when a child would be very secretive. And I think you were mentioning this when you were doing your feedback, being secretive, especially online as well. As soon as you walk into the room, all of a sudden the phone or the computer is closed, or they, you know, quickly put the phone down. So that's an indication that maybe something happening. They have got an older boyfriend or girlfriend. They have gifts that you've not bought them, new trainers or new phones, things like this. You might notice that they're getting involved in underage drinking or drug taking, spending more or less time online or on their devices. This is a very important one, being upset or withdrawn or distressed. If you know your child and you know the temperament of your child, and all of a sudden, you know, even if you're a parent or you work in Sabbath school or Pathfinders, you notice a change. The idea is if there's a change in their behavior, that is a sign that something is wrong. Sexualized behavior, you notice again that it's unusual for your child to be coming out with such terminology in the way that they're behaving in a sexualized way when they're playing as well, some of their games. And long periods of time away from home. These are all signs that there could be grooming taking place. Like I said, this is not an exhaustive list.
Yeah, and I've just noticed that in the chat, I know Mark's suggested we look at the David Finkel's model of grooming, and that's maybe something as well, Mark. What we'll do if we get the information, we'll put that on our site, because to the safeguarding site, I'm trying to add things as we go along. So that sort of things we can, you know, add. And with some of these things, we will try and add different information, different things. So keep checking the site, because I think the more information we have, the better we understand things. And it's about having those discussions, and we want to create that space for you as well. So that is something we're building at the moment. So let's this.
Okay. Yeah, that's page 71. So how to prevent grooming.
Right. So how to prevent grooming.
It's on page 72.
Page 72. Yeah. You know, 10 things we can do to help keep children and young people safe. Things you can do as a parent. You can keep gaming devices and computers and laptops with webcams in the living room or family spaces. Use parental controls. You know, like you have your controls which controls, you know, software which protects us and all to different sort of types. You can get more controls put on make it age appropriate for your child so they can only access certain things. Teach children about good and bad habits, teach children how to be assertive. They need to be able to say no, teach children about consent, make sure children know what is healthy, what is unhealthy, touch, know where children are and who they're with, because but bear in mind as well, perpetrators happens in the home now, so you've got to know what's going on in their homes. As far as possible, ensure that there are always at least 2 adults working with children. That's from a church setting. That's the best advice we can give in that sense, because that also minimizes things. But from a home setting, it is hard. There's a program we have in family ministries called Safety Devices. You know, it's something I'm going to try and sort of roll out more to the church. We did something at one of the Teens Day once, but I think it's important as parents, you know, we give them some skills and equipment to try. It's hard. And as I know somebody said at the beginning of the Zoom, I myself am not the best technological person. You with me? I have a learning process. So, you know, we need some support and help with these kind of things. But I think that is really important. So these kind of things are available. There are many things for safety online. And I think really, to be fair, with teenagers, we need to reduce some of the things they have access to and make it more age appropriate, and have more restrictions. But that's another subject, not for today. But at least, you know, I think you get the general picture there. Definitely. Okay.
So this is just some information. 1 in 20 children in the UK have been sexually abused. Over 90% of sexually abused children, this is what's a frightening part, was abused by somebody they knew. I mean, back in the day, they used to say stranger danger, but now it's not a stranger, it's somebody they know. And it's got here, 1 in a third of children are sexually abused by other children and young people. And so this is what we said earlier on, that let's be careful with older children, because if a child has been abused, sometimes they don't really understand sometimes what's happened to them. And sometimes they do go on to abuse other children. They may not have had some possible support, which is why they might go on to abuse. They might have other issues that they need to work through. But that's something we should be aware of. And it says here that over 27,000 children were identified as needing protection from neglect. 1 in 5 children have been exposed to domestic abuse, and 130,000 children live in households with high risk domestic abuse. And domestic abuse, you think, oh, it's just happening between the parents, but what does happen is that the children are still hearing what is going on. They are seeing the effects of domestic abuse with perhaps bruises or marks on either the woman or the male in that home. They're seeing perhaps windows broken, various things around the house broken. Sometimes they're not sleeping. Sometimes they're anxious. They're not concentrating at school. Sometimes they're acting out because of what's happening in the home. So it does affect children in a very, very profound way.
And there is, I think something's been put in the chat, but there is a lot of abuse does happen between older children and younger children. Some of the cases I've certainly had reported to me from a conference level, to be fair as well, because remember, as a church, we have to reach out to both the victim and the perpetrator in the sense of support. And to be fair, sometimes more cases than not, when older children have abused, it sometimes is being because of their personal circumstances. Maybe abuse has been done to them. There's a lot of issues. So I guess it's being aware of it and putting things in place to support families with situations, because I'm not leaving the risk element. That's why I'm saying I would be very concerned if we are having a lot of because something came to us the other day as a conference, which just concerns me. I hope this is not happening in the churches where young children are being left just in the care of just the older child and no other adults is around, because that is where things happen. So we have to try and minimize the risk. We have to put things in place. So that's where I guess we can't discuss this on the platform, but that's where you need to be having those discussions in your churches and looking at things, and where families need support. Because as I said, some of these who are perpetrators, they themselves have sometimes been abused and things happen, so they need counseling, they need some support as well. So it's an all-round thing we're talking about here, yeah, in that sense. Okay, so where we see abuse now, oftentimes there are common signs. So we think it's in the forehead, the nose, the chin, those elbows, knees, those are the kind of hips, common signs. But what about the uncommon signs where you wouldn't see? Yeah.
Okay, so where you would not expect to see physical injuries, we've got some things listed there. The skull, it's talking about grass marks on the back, on the thighs, buttocks, bruising around the eyes, the mouth area, bruising on the chest. I mean, obviously, if someone's wearing clothes, you're not going to be able to see bruising on the chest. But if, as a Pathfinder group, you go into swimming one day, or you're at the seaside and you're going into the sea to have a splash, you will perhaps see those bruises on the thighs and on the chest area. We've got upper and inner arms, the shoulders, the neck. I think it's also important to recognize if it's, for example, a really hot summer's day and all the children have got shorts and t-shirts on as you go to your day out at the zoo or wherever it is, and you've got one child who has got their clothes, covering every part of their body on a hot day. So they're obviously covering up marks. And even if you can't see marks, if a child, for example, goes to touch another child on the shoulder and then that other child flinches, you know that that other child has got some sort of a pain in that particular area. And it's about making sure that you're reporting these things to your designated lead, because they will make a note of all these things that are taking place.
Okay, so just to summarize now, as we get into the DBS soon, once we change this next exercise, this is the structure of our church in terms of the safeguarding. So overall, we have the British Union, which I agree is in charge of all the areas, not just the two conferences, North and South England, but Ireland, Scotland and Wales. And overall, that has a safeguarding committee, and that committee, from time to time, those of us in the conferences were invited, but they also have their inner circle as well within the BUC, and that ensures we are following good safeguarding practice, and we do work with other organisations, and that's important to work both for the local church level and also from a conference level as well, and union level. And then, of course, the structure is comes down from the BUC to the conference and mission, and we have our president, we have our designated safeguarding persons, which would be, myself in the conference. We have a communication person, Pastor Joe. We also had a disclosure clerk, which primarily has always sat in Pastor Emmanuel Brand's department, the secretariat, but because of now recent safeguarding things, there is a desire for it to become. So I'm now also looking at the disclosure clerk work, still working with the secretariat, but we're in a transition period at the moment. So we are now trying to bring it all under one thing as safeguarding. So it helps us to monitor things a bit better. I know there are some challenges with historically from the safeguarding, but the DBS side, but we are trying now to work through these backlog and get it together. But then from there, it comes down to the local church level, where you have the local minister, your designated safeguarding officer, or lead, as they may be referred to, responsible person, which is your head of department, each board member. I don't know if you are responsible, and a disclosure clerk. Now, ideally, the disclosure clerk should be a different person from the designated safeguarding lead, because disclosure clerk is mainly administrative, but there's a lot of work involved. I know in some smaller churches you may have one and the same, that we accept that has to happen, but ideally it's better if they're separated. And for the larger churches, and I say this in every training, it's good if you get a safeguarding team, because that helps lighten the load somewhat. And you can, of course, even on a disclosure clerk, I know some of them are saying it's a lot to do all the DBS as well. You don't just have to have one person, you can have an assistant, and that can be named on the system as well. So there is a lot of options there, but that's basically the structure. So we're going to break them down now. Yeah. Okay, so the safeguarding person or the designated lead leads on safeguarding matters on behalf of the church. Also can report to the authorities as they see, the bigger picture. Acts as an advocate on behalf of the children and adults in need of protection. Deals with concerns and suspicions of abuse, keeping accurate records. Ensure safeguarding policy and guidance is followed. That's basically based upon the policy book we're going through today. Also promotes protection of children and adults at risk. Organizes training within the church. So I will do the main training like across the conference where we're going to come to all the areas as do, but it doesn't mean you guys have to do something locally. The worst thing you can do is sit on information. We can give you a 10-point PowerPoint to develop your own PowerPoint for your own style, but you need to be doing some training on a regular basis in your local church. It's no good as all the officers need to know what their roles are and understand. We have within from the BUC a list of roles and responsibilities for each officer of the church. That is again is on the safeguarding page. If you need it, we can email it out to you as well. Oh, somebody's saying, can we let someone in the meeting? Please let her back in. She was part before. If you can do that, thank you. I can see a hand is raised. Is it Christian? Is it?
Christian.
Christian, your hand was up, or was that from before? Maybe it was from before. Okay. Yes. So these are the roles, and finally, you will work in partnership with statutory authorities and other agencies. So it's very important, we build up these connections, local social services, local people in your area. I notice, I think Sean put on about the police and the work they're doing to make people aware, let's work with some of these agencies. And sometimes I've often advised, we even said this in the training last week, it's very important sometimes. There are some Christians who are in social work. We have a lot of people in our own church as well. Invite somebody in to have a discussion, maybe in an AY or something. And because sometimes some of the fears people have, it's because they don't understand what the work is. A social worker's job, I have a lot of good social worker friends. It's not their role to take children off people. That's not their primary job. They want to work with families. But you need to understand how social workers work. So invite them in. Let's have a little discussion. Let's hear from them. Let's build these relationships. That's what we're saying. So all of that you can help coordinate. And your pastors have had some very intensive thing done at the Connected series recently. They're going to work with you on that. So if you need some help, talk to your pastor. Let's work together to build this, because we need to make sure our churches not only have the education, but have the tools they need to be able to deal with things. So that's your safeguarding person. And then, you want to do the last one, responsible person.
So the responsible person, you can see on page 12 and 40, you will find the information on that. So they are the head of every department in the church. So every person who has a responsibility for an area or leading in whatever area, you are classed as a responsible person. You are the first point of contact for any church member with concerns because you're leading in that capacity. You keep accurate records of disclosure communications. You ensure that the team completes all the DBS checks required. And I don't know where that's coming from here. Okay. So, okay. One thing I would say, as you are the head of your department, you have to meet on a regular basis to you review your plans for the department, and you have to decide on how you're going to be moving forward. So as you review your plans in the way of planning for what you're going to be covering, it will be really useful is to go through small areas of this policy. So every time you meet, you only need to spend 5 minutes, 5-10 minutes, just looking at one aspect of the policy. So everybody on your team is aware of some of, we talked about those indicators of abuse, because you can't be everywhere, you can't see everything, but one of your team may see something or notice something, and it's important that they're aware of those signs, that they can then report it to the safeguarding lead, because the safeguarding lead has everybody coming to them with whatever may be witnessed or seen. And it may come to a point where, because of all the information they've had, they may need to take further action with the information, but it's important for you to say something. It supports their team with fulfilling their roles and safeguarding responsibilities. They maintain safe working practices across their department. Now, we've got a question mark there, because in the policy, it does sort of say what is acceptable and unacceptable in the way of how you work with your, young people, or for example, your teens. So I've got a question. And what would you do if you observe, say if you were a teen leader or a youth leader, and you had regular meetings with the young people, but what would you do if you observed that, for example, one of your team was having conversations with one of the members in the youth group? They were ringing them late at night, or perhaps they were having private meetings with one of the young people. What would you do in that situation?
Yeah, okay. Why are you thinking about that? Can I just say, I've just had a message from Horace. He was trying to get back in. He was on before, so I don't know if you could, those of you who are monitoring the Zoom, if you could let him in, please, because he said he can't get back in. Probably in the waiting room, actually. So if you could sort that, please. Thank you. Yes, sorry.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yes. So you are the head of your department, and you've just noticed that one of your team members is having one-on-one meetings with an individual, one of the young people. What would you do? You can raise your hand and then share a point. So you do nothing then. So is that?
I would.
Yeah.
Hello. I would ask, or just say, excuse me, to my team member, and take them aside to a private place and discuss with them the risk that they're running for accusation of, abusing this young person. They need to be with another member of the team or another adult and not be alone with them. I would just have a little word with them like that, as a word of caution, and just monitor them. If I find them again doing that, I would have to report them to our safeguarding lead.
But that's excellent. You said that. I think the key there was the fact that they're putting themselves at risk, because the idea is that you're safeguarding yourself and that other individual. So well done there.
I can see a few hands. Sister Maxine, could you help us, or one of you? Who's next?
James.
Yeah. Yes, Pastor, we have James.
So to me, I'd want to know what's going on. So I'd ask the two individuals, but separately what's going on. I've noticed, there's been like a lot of chats, and find out the information from both parties. And then if there's a concern, I'd have no choice but to report it, but I'd try and find out the information from both parties involved separately. So I wouldn't let them know, each one. Try and do it the same day, so I know what's going on, and then go from there.
Okay, thank you. And then we had
are you saying, sorry? Oh.
Charlene?
No, it's not Charlene. Sorry, it's Stephanie.
Oh, Stephanie.
Yes.
Yes. No, mine was a question. I don't know whether I'm disturbing your question by asking the question.
Can't see you though.
If we could just focus on this, and if you could save your question.
Okay, all right.
This area first.
Yeah.
And then we can go on to yours as a separate question. But if we finish this area, that would be helpful. Thank you.
All right, that's fine.
Thank you.
Okay,
yeah.
Sister Sibu, do you still have a question?
No, I think it's
It
Arlene
wasn't
now.
a question. I was just going to add in the sense that I think as a family of God, that's why it is important to forge those important relationships, so that if we see something that's amiss or that's concerning, we'll be able to intervene without anybody feeling like they are being personally attacked, because everybody will be feeling safe, so they won't feel like it's a witch hunt. And then secondly, in terms of if somebody is maybe having a deep conversation or a concerning conversation without the child having an adult around, it's so important to just speak to that person on the side privately, like what my sister said, that it's not only safeguarding the child as well, that adult as well might be doing it innocently. They need to safeguard themselves, and maybe it's worth having their parent as well included in these conversations. But ultimately we need to build good relationships in church so that we can intervene in a way that everybody, both the perpetrators, if I may, for lack of a better word, and those that may be victimized, feel safe to have those conversations that can save more heartaches and pains.
And I think the idea is, like I said, it is in the policy about best practice. It's about following best practice, because ultimately we're talking about being proactive. We want to avoid things happening, and if people think it's okay for everyone to be having one-on-one meetings, other people may start coming in and feel it's okay, and that's when things could potentially take place. But ultimately, if you feel that the person may benefit from some extra training, then by all means encourage them to go on the training. But the idea is that the policy does say we shouldn't really be having one-on-one meetings, and I think where you can't avoid it, I think the advice is to have a meeting with the door open, so that it's not a closed door, it's an open door, if it was a meeting about whatever it may be. Or have meetings if you have to with other people within the building, if you're having a meeting at church.
Okay, so yeah, there seems to be a lot of questions, and I'm conscious of the time as well. We're going to try and take some, but we may have to ask you to put some things in the chat as well, and we will go through some of the. Even if we don't get a chance to deal with all of it today, because I appreciate there is a lot of issues. This is a work in progress, yeah, and it's about having those discussions, having those conversations. And the good thing, I know some people have got different views on approaching authorities, but the good things of approaches is sometimes they have information which can assist us, and it's for that reason we need to all be working together a little bit more effectively. And that is not necessarily a bad thing; that is actually a good thing. But we can have,
we do report that to the safeguarding.
We do,
if we feel that.
Yes,
it's not
we have to. We have to do that. We have to do that.
Individual.
So moving on, because time is really ticking here. Let's look at the disclosure clerk, and we're going to go for a little bit more detail, but we're going to break some of you off for an exercise in a bit. But the disclosure clerk really is basically it's an admin role, and you basically are responsible for undertaking all the safeguarding administrative tasks. So responsible for getting people's DBS, going on to Atlantic data system, organising disclosure barring service, issuing role descriptions relating to safeguarding, maintain up-to-date list of those working with children and adults at risk, receive training, obviously now from ourselves, in conjunction with the Secretariat, and returning reports to the conference. This is important. So all of this is part of your role, and there is information given on the system for this. Yes, so we're going to go through these before we go to the exercise, and then we're going to spend a bit more time with your DBS people as well. So the disclosure barring service really, it looks at any individual working or intending to work with children on or adults at risk must be DBS checked. Now that is people who are serving officers it does not necessarily mean every parent and person. I've had quite a few emails on this. The DBS rules are, even if you were going to DBS somebody, is that you should be at least 3 times or more a month working on a consistent basis. So that's why obviously your key officers, definitely. That's why some of those assistants, not all, but the odd parent who drops in now and again, that's a different thing. But you do never leave somebody in a room who is not DBS. But that is the guidance given us, because we can also overdo it. But at the same time, it's important your key officers. And we are saying all board members who are key officers have to be DBS. Even if your role doesn't involve necessarily directly with the children or adults all the time. But the reason why your board members specifically, that's your lead, your heads of department, have to be, is because you are all trustees and you are also responsible adults. So imagine a situation if anybody can come to you as a responsible person to report a case. So imagine if you are not DBS, what problems that will cause, because it's basic. And we know we've had a lot of arguments about, well, I've got one at my work. The question I always throw back to the group is, if you was to have a church DBS and take it to your work and say, would you accept it? I'm sure your employer would say no, because they have their own philosophy. And likewise, we as a church, we are working on update services and all those things and enhance and all those things. But at the moment, what we are saying, we want every board member to be DBS and leading officer. And that's what the directive has gone around. And that's why we need it. I've explained the reasons why. And it doesn't cost you anything, and it's important in key departments with your children and stuff. For example, it's important maybe the deaconesses and the deacons and the elders are all DBS because they interact with all the departments. Your deaconesses are interacting every day. Your deacons are interacting every day with everybody. So when you're doing community projects, if you're serving food at church, and outside of church delivering stuff, if you're actively involved with programs, those are the kind of things you need to be looking at. So all of those things, it's applying it practically. It's not overdoing it, but it's applying it practically and meeting the needs.
So I'm just going to read this question for Pastor to answer. It says, who will do, oh, it's just gone.
Let's go.
It was just up there and it's gone. Let me just try and go up. Who will do the DBS if you are the DBS clerk, because you can't DBS yourself?
Okay, so traditionally what we have done is that's where the DBS clerk and the safeguarding officer work together, so you can interchange with each other. But obviously initially as well, if you just set it up, we can help you at the office. We will initiate that for you as well. So there'll always be a way and able, but of course, we want to get to the stage where you can work with each other. But initially, we're going to help you. We realize there are a few new people come. We realize we have a backlog of people being logged out of systems. We're going to talk to you a little bit about that in the next part of the training now. But there is always a way of getting it sorted. So either if your existing safeguarding officer isn't able to do it because they haven't got their own, then we will initiate it from the office for you. So we will start you off, but we want to get you up and running as quick as possible, and that's the idea.
Can I just say, for me, what I did, I spoke to the conference, so they did my DBS and they did my family member, because I can't do my family member DBS.
No, you can't.
So they did everything. So you can talk to another church sister. They can do the DBS for you if you're a DBS member and you can't DBS yourself.
Yes, I'm glad you brought that one out. I was going to bring that out in the training. It's very important, please. We cannot do our relatives, neither of us. I can't, even if I want mine, I have to go to somebody else in the conference to do, that's how it's done, so that's really important. And we are here to help in that. Okay. So it's our last one.
Pastor, can you put up the picture what you had up before you talked about the DBS, please? Screenshot.
Oh, the one before. Okay, this
Yes,
one.
please.
Yeah? Yes.
Thank you.
Pastor, can I just ask, because we've got 17-year-olds who are trainee volunteers who work with us in the summer on the scheme that we do with the local community. Do you have to be 18 to have a DBS?
Yes, it is 18, but you can up to 16, isn't it, Sister Maxine? Help me here.
18 years old, Pastor.
Yes,
The
it's
age of
18.
consent, 18.
Yes, that is the age of consent, but we do have something for.
We'll have to check and
Yes,
come back to
let
you
me
if
just
you're
come
not
back
sure.
to you
can
because
them
there is a
sorry, you can have DBSs for the age of 17 because a lot of them go on work experience and have.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. The
Yes.
actual guidance is, and I've sent something out to somebody the other day, and also there is a section in our policy here which you can actually use to actually help. I'm just going to get you the page as we go on, but there is, because remembering all the page numbers, I'm going to go through that when I go through it with you anyway.
Thank you.
There is a section that you can use to just assess, but from what the information we sent out, you can. It used to be very younger, but they changed that when they went over to DBSs. But from the work experience, from the 16 plus, you can do something, and there's some guidance there, which I'm going to send you out. I will send that out to you, okay? Because that is the rules now, and they can be DBS from 16 upwards. Right. Right. So this is important as well, I think, to really understand here is when we are giving somebody a post in church, and this is, and I want to stress this is a minimum requirement. The advice is not to give somebody a post till they have been in church a minimum of 6 to 12 months before giving them a new or previously unknown members of church office. And the reason is people need time to settle, and we do not know always who's coming into the church. So I know sometimes this can be challenging when we have smaller churches and when we have officerships need filling, but sometimes the advice would be better to not have an office filled and follow protocol than to just try and get somebody in for the sake of it. So, you know, let's not be in a situation where we're so desperate for offices, we think everybody what comes in, oh yeah, you can. No, that's not how it works. You can't come to be an office. The idea is people have to have time to settle. They have to have time to develop themselves, and we have to observe and grow, because sometimes even said perpetrators tend to do church hopping. That's a factor. But this is good advice anyway, okay? This is good advice anyway.
It's sorry to interrupt. It's quite a large gap though, isn't it? From 6 to 12 months.
Well, the minimum is 6. That's what we're saying. Minimum.
Just my thoughts.
One of the problems we've had is this is the problem. One of the problems we have, people come in, transfer the membership straight into office. That's what's been happening. And it's not good practice.
Yeah, but yes, but then who is going to enforce this? Because our pastors, are they aware of this?
They are aware. They are aware.
Yes. So
in the manual, this is stated in the policy. It's very clear, you know. So everybody is aware of this, and this is the advice. Yes, we give it out in the training, but this is the advice across the board now. This is the advice. Too many things happen in the past.
Yeah.
And this is it always causes a reaction. I understand that, but this is the advice.
Pastor, can I say something? You know, the policy is if you have been, in the church for 6 months,
yes,
you need to make sure you transfer your membership within a period of 6 months. If you have been in the church, if you are new, 6 months, transfer your membership.
Pastor, what do you do if people refuse to do the DBS when they are in office?
Amen.
You can't hold the office.
You have to step down.
Yeah, because we've heard lots of people refusing to do the DBS.
Fine.
as
That's
well. So
okay.
They should not work with children.
That's
Anyway, with
okay. They just don't
vulnerable
serve.
adults.
They
Yes,
can't have a
don't.
post then.
No.
Yeah, they cannot have a post if they
Oh,
refuse.
yeah, they can't. If you
So
refuse,
I'm glad that one of our elders is here because we're
Yeah.
having challenges. So
well, yes,
yeah,
but
if they refuse, I mean, they can't work with children, vulnerable adults.
yeah.
no, I'm talking
A
about
letter was sent out to all the churches. Right?
Yeah.
We give a grace period as well. We've been very gracious, really. And this is why, in some cases, you know, what we've said, if you haven't got people on the system who are authorized, then maybe some departments just don't run or have to be suspended for a time, you know. Put it this way, you know, on the other side of the fence, from a conference point of view, there are sometimes calls come in which can be very serious. I have situations where people, I can't discuss individual situations, but all I can say to you is there's sometimes situations where you may have somebody who's not been DBS'd, maybe DBS elsewhere, something then comes up, and you then discover, well, the church hasn't DBS. The DBS is only as good, by the way, as the day you've done it. I accept that. However, it is part of good practice. If, for example, something was to happen and some incident was to happen at church, the first thing the authority would want to check is the group DB. You know, it's a pretty standard thing. I can't understand the issue because it doesn't cost you anything. If for some reason I do accept, probably, maybe I should qualify this. Sometimes people are saying there are issues where they don't want certain individuals to do their DBS. Well, okay, if that's an issue, let us work on that. Let's get around that. But we have to get the DBS done somehow, you know, even if you have to ring the officer. We don't want to be doing all the DBS. We can't do that, but we can help sometimes. But what I'm saying, it is part of good practice. You know, the policy is going to be reviewed again in March. And when it is reviewed, you know, this is going to come out a little bit more. But we have been, this is not just across the NECs, across the whole BUC. We have done a blanket decision now for everybody. Enough information has been sent out on this. Please, I don't want to spend ages on this one, because this, as far as I'm concerned, has been put to bed, and I mean, moving forward. Brother Mark, you had a point.
Pastor. Very quick, I'm going to say very quick, what Pastor's saying is correct. Let me give you an actual real case example to put this point to rest. Some years ago, a young lady worked for a nursery in a city, one of the cities. The nursery did not DBS her. What she was doing is being fed by a paedophile across the country to film herself abusing the child in the nursery. So it was done like in third party. It's a public, you can find in the news. It's not a personal case. It's something that's in the news. When the authorities checked out with the nursery, how did she pass the criteria for working in the nursery? The nursery stated that they did not DBS her. And all this time, what she was doing was having herself filmed by a paedophile across a different part of the country, and he was using her to abuse other children to get his own kicks going, as was stated, which is why the DBS aspect is so vitally important. None of us here on here with children in schools would go to a school and give our children over to teachers who are not DBS checked. You would say, I'm not bringing my child to that school or to that playgroup or so forth. We have to operate the same policy within the church. As Pastor said rightly, it's a hunting ground for individuals. Any person who says, I don't want to have a DBS check done, you have to therefore go to it as a red flag and safeguard the church and the individuals. Thank you.
Thank you.
Was it
Pastor
Grace?
Francis?
Sorry,
Yes, we have
sister.
a list of persons.
I know we do.
Thank you.
Do you want to get out of here?
Pastor, sorry, my point goes to before the DBS and your point about church hopping. When we do the membership transfers, the transferring church is saying that member is in good and regular standing. We need to be clear when we're agreeing to a transfer that we're sending to another church that we are happy to say that if there are any concerns, how is it being raised? Because otherwise people would not be allowed to, this thing about church hopping. The membership transfer process should be stopping that church hopping, because if there's a red flag about somebody, we should not be saying to the receiving church, this member's in good and regular standing.
That's a very valid point, Grace. Yeah. I think this new system will help on this as well. But yeah. Sorry, Sister Maxine.
Yes, let's allow Felix, and we come in that order.
Okay.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Just got two questions on the safeguarding and then on the DBS. Work within the Pathfinder Club, and we do take children to overnight or 2-3 nights camps. And with the little children, now we do take adventurers as well. And with adventurers, we know that in terms of personal care, they will struggle to sort of attend to their personal care. And sometimes in order to kind of circumvent the problem of having staff attending to those children's personal care, we do invite sort of their parents. So the question is, if a parent doesn't have an office in church, but they don't have DBS, can they be allowed to come and stop over at a 2 nights or sort of an overnight camp? Because one, they won't be having only contact with their children, they will have contact with other people's children. And then the other question on top of that, some sites, especially in West Midlands, like Borderset, would have some facilities like bathrooms and toilets, which will say no children allowed in those facilities, it's only adults. So if a parent who is within the club that you are taking insists on taking their child into the adult-only facility, is that a safeguarding issue, or how do you handle it, especially if other adults are not comfortable with having the children coming in the facilities? Thank you.
Okay, yeah. I think certainly on your second part of the question, I want to say we need to have a separate discussion with the Pathfinders. I'm trying to arrange something with Pastor Acquisa that we can have a separate meeting on that, because there are a lot of complex issues. But just as a general principle, I do a family camp as well, so that's one of the ones I run. And what we do is we DBS all our staff. We can't obviously we're not going to DBS all the parents what come, because the parents come obviously as part of camp. But the idea is none of those parents will be ever left alone with the child, and the staff who are responsible for them are obviously correctly doing things, and it's following those general principles and following the guidance of the camp. Obviously we have our own camp at Aberdowen, camps outside, but we have to follow principles. But let's perhaps deal with that a little bit more, because there's quite a lot in that question that you've asked there. The other point, because I'm just conscious that it's near one, we have, who was next? Was it Felix, was it? Or was it, no, Felix, it was a Muffin, but...
Muffin, Greta, and Grace.
Yeah.
And Horace.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, Muffin, yes.
Yeah, I was saying, as we are talking about safeguarding, I hear we are leaning more towards children, which is a good thing. But I want us to also focus on vulnerable adults. We can have some students attending our churches far from home, and we have people who are widows or people who are just on their own.
And we look at as well, you mentioned that people who hold positions in church that are going to serve. So sometimes you find that with the eldership, I believe every elder should be DBS as well, because they are on duty and they can deal with any group, the children or the adults. So this was my concern. I know the children are most because they can't speak for themselves or defend themselves, but there are also many vulnerable adults, some people with their personalities or some with their disabilities.
Yes, and they need to be cared for, and that's why our leadership is important to put those things in place. And I agree with you. Of course, that's what we've always said. You know, all the leadership needs to be DBS. It has to be. You know, and that includes the elders as well, because they're across everybody. But it's not only just that; it's putting these safe practices, which the policy does mention. How do we do that as well? And there is also the self-check-in form, which is from page 43 to page 45, which you can do with your key officers as well. This is also a second layer of protecting our churches and putting things in place, and that is so crucial. I think really, because of time, we're really going to have to move on. There is Horace, and was it Grace, very briefly?
I'm just asking, actually, regarding the transfer of membership, would you then go into having a DBS before the church member, move to another church, or and then I'll ask, how far do we go?
Well, the DBS really is only for your key officers, isn't it? It's not for every member. You can't DBS every member. That's not what we've ever said. The DBS is for the key officers, but there is a responsibility. I think Grace or somebody mentioned before, which was quite correct. When a member has been transferred, the church should be recommending them and should really, do their due diligence in that. That's what should happen. However, from a DBS, not from a DBS, from a safeguarding point of view now, because of the new system we've got on place, I guess people won't be able to just do church hopping. If they're a named person on the system, it will start flagging up now. So that will help a bit. But the churches have to do due diligence. That's what has to happen. I really need to move on now because I can see us not finishing.
I've got the last point here. Sorry,
just to say that someone raised a point on people refusing to have their DBS checked, which is very, very well understood due to the fact that our church has never been safeguarded. It has never been a church that take DBS. It's due to the new situation that is there now. However, I think the church has to be really careful in introducing this DBS to the people, to let them know about the sensitivity of information as well as how their information is going to be treated, because there's now this Secrecy Act as well. In church, there's a lot of gossip, there's a lot of this and that, therefore it's important that, it's actually introduced in a very, very careful way and for people to understand. Thank you.
Okay. Yes. Horace.
Yes, Pastor. The thing is, I was checking out online that for the DBS, it's actually age of 16. So this applies to work experiences, volunteering, and other roles. That's the first thing. Albeit that the post is a voluntary post, it's important but people to remember that this is a policy of the church, so therefore it has to be carried out. The thing is, again, we cannot refuse DBS at work. So why should we refuse it at church? So regardless of all the questions that people are asking, it is important because this is the policy, and the policy states that if you are in post, you need to have a DBS. So that goes without saying. So I don't think we should have a lot of debate over it. It is the policy of a church, so therefore it needs to be done.
Thank you. Totally agree. Can we move on now, please?
Thank you. We've got to move on now, please. So let's just summarize this. Put your points in the chat and we will pick them up at some point, if not all today, to answer some of those questions. As we're moving on, because as I say, we're at 1 o'clock now, we're going to have a group exercise with some scenarios, after which we're going to put most of you into that groups. But the DBS people, you need to come back into the main room if you get put in a group. Yeah, so you need to just exit yourself and come back with us, because I'm just going to go for a little time with the DBS people to go through a couple of things. Yeah, Delamon, you can explain this section now. Yeah.
For everybody else, then, so what's going to happen? As you get put into your rooms, it's going to be done on the all the 12 rooms. You just get allocated straight away into a room straight away. You need to designate one person. And you will need to write down all the names of the people in your group. So you'll have to do this. If you can get somebody to type this up or to write it out and then type it later, write down all the names of everyone in your group and your room number. Okay. Then you need to nominate a person to read the scenario. We're going to show you the scenario in a minute. You'll need to photograph the scenario on your phone. Okay, I can't see this. Yeah. Okay, do that then. So yeah, photograph the scenario, and we're going to ask you to discuss the scenario and what your initial thoughts are and what your actions would be. And write down what abuse you think is taking place and what your initial thoughts and action would be. So everyone needs to take a photo now. If you could take a photo of this information, because you'll need this. And I'll just quickly tell you now, you are going to need to email your information through, because when you come back, we only want you to share 1 point. We only want you to share 1 point from your discussions, and all your other points that you've discussed will be on your sheet, and we want you to email that in to the conference. And it was the family email address.
Yeah, so it's family@necadventist.org.uk. That has been put on the chat, and we'll re-put it back on again. So you can, Sister Maxine will put that on. So you can email to that as well. Yeah, and I'll just let everybody know as well, because I hope we don't lose anybody on the way, but just let everybody know there will be a test. Coming to this course is not sufficient. Those of you who are coming within the not within the 2 years, but over the 2 year time, so you're coming fresh, there will be an exam sent to you. It will be sent to your emails probably tomorrow. And you need to get that back within 14 days if you can, please, because we have other trainings we're doing. We haven't got time because of the number to do grades, but what we will do is it'll be a simple pass or fail. So that will be a test, and that's what will show you've completed this course and qualified, and that's what will get you the certificate. You would not get that without doing this test, and neither will you have qualified for your church office. Okay, so that's important to mention.
So right. I'm hoping that is clear on what you need to do while you're in your group. Right. So this will need to be emailed to, or can be typed up, your first and last name, please, because there may be more than one person with the first name. You need your first name and your last name and your room number. Okay, I hope that's clear. I'm going to go to the next slide. Okay, there it is. I forgot that. Yeah, it's on there. So there it is. Take another photo. I forgot that it was there. So email your answers into the NEC. There it is, family@necadventist.org.uk. Sorry, if you could take a quick snap of that. Okay, I'm hoping everyone's got a copy of that. I'm going to now move to the next slide. So what you need to do now is you need to take a photo of both of these scenarios. There are 2 scenarios, the scenario 1 and there's going to be scenario 2. If you were in a room with an odd number, you will concentrate on scenario 1. So all the numbers with 1, 3, 5, all the odd number rooms, you are going to work on scenario 1. And remember what I said, you are going to only feedback one thing. So everybody should be discussing to it such an extent, hopefully everyone should have something to share that nobody else has shared when it comes time to come back. So you're driving home after a long day at work because it's late, you decide to get a takeaway, you get caught up in a lot of traffic. As you're driving along, you notice a young child at the side of the road. You need to write down your thoughts. This is still part of scenario 1, so you need to take a photo of this sheet. There is no sign of any adult. The child has no shoes on. The little girl, as it seems, is 2 to 3 years old. A neighbor nearby says children are always out playing on the street. And after 5 to 10 minutes, a man comes out of a nearby house and walks towards you. That is scenario 1. So I hope you've taken your photo. I'm now going to move to...
Sorry, I missed the first scenario, if you don't mind, please.
Yeah, if you just please
before the first one,
This is it. This is it here. This is the first one.
Okay, that's the one. Thank you.
Right, so you've got that. You've taken the photo.
It's in the chat as well.
Okay, so we've
Thank
got
you.
that. Then you've got your scenario. You should have taken a photo. So up there are for the odd numbered rooms. If you are in an even numbered room, you have to work on scenario 2. I'm not going to read this one. If you take a screenshot of that scenario, and then I'd like you to work on that. We are going to give you 15 minutes, and then all the DBS clerks, you'll get put into a room, but you need to come back out so that Pastor can go through the slides on the DBS application of how to do that.
So you need to come straight back out. So I don't know, Luke, are you able to send everybody directly? We do it automatically this time rather than...
Let's try to do automatically. Yeah, let me see what I can do.
If you're DBS, you come back out into the main room where Pastor will go through the DBS side. So you have 15 minutes, and we'll put the timer on to when you have to come back. Okay, so we can come out of this now, can't we?
Do we need to recreate the rooms, or?
So it should be, you can still do the 12 rooms. Or can you make more rooms? No. Okay.
Looks like it's doing it now.
Yeah, it's doing it very quickly.
I'm staying on because of the DBS.
I can still see a number of people on the main session. I'll check if we can sort this out.
I've come back.
Yes.
All right.
We've come back because of the GPS.
Yes, that's good.
All right. Okay.
Right.
Thank you for coming back. I missed it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay, so the impact of the abuse, it as you can see on this picture, it really can have tremendous impact. You know, it's stress related. It can cause physical injury, shame, poor emotional regulation. All of these things and much more. So it affects long term. That's all this is really saying. It affects long term, and this is important. Somebody's asked us to show the previous slide. Which slide was that, Sean? Is that the one before that? This one? Is that this one?
Yes. Okay. So
read only to everyone from Sean chat. Sorry.
okay.
Yes,
So I think they've got that. So we can move on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Photograph that and please use that.
So this is the ACEs study. The ACEs study was a study that was carried out in 1919. There was a questionnaire that looked at 10 different areas. That was physical, emotional, sexual, mental, domestic abuse, substance abuse, if somebody was incarcerated, if you've been through divorce, physical, and then emotional neglect. And the study then found that if anybody had experienced 6 or more of any one of those items there on the left-hand column, that there was a likelihood that they would die 20 years earlier. They noticed that the person in kind would have suffered from some sort of adverse childhood experience. So 6 or more of those. They noticed that if that was the case, that they had a disrupted neurodevelopment, in that the brain didn't develop in the way that it should. And when compared to like a 5-year-old compared to a 5-year-old who had a very stable upbringing, they would notice significant differences in the way that that child was able to learn and absorb information at school, for example, and was able to communicate. We've got here social, emotional, and cognitive impairment. That means there were definite significant delays, and significant harm was recorded. That basically there was so many developmental delays. So the child would be walking at a certain age if they had all the right input and support, whereas other children would be walking later, talking later, and not achieving those set milestones that other children would be achieving. Then as the child grew and got older, they noticed that they started to adopt some risky behavior. They would start experimenting with different things, with drugs and maybe with alcohol, maybe mixing with the wrong crowds because of their risky behavior. And they possibly would then get, perhaps run over because they're intoxicated, walking into the road, they perhaps run over, end up being suffering from some sort of disability. Lots of other diseases because of the fact that they're now adopting this risky behavior. And sadly, they found that such children did die 20 years earlier. So the research has proved that it's a very sad state of affairs for children who have got. So if you imagine if a child has had all of these 10 experiences, I'm not saying it's impossible for that child to live a happy, healthy life, but the chances are that sadly, because of this study, they've proved that they do suffer long-term effects. Do you want to take these hands, or do you want us to move on?
There are a few questions. We've got like a couple more slides that we're going to just show you, and then we'll take some questions.
Okay.
So basically, you want to move on to this one?
Yeah, I think this was
the
important.
ACEs study is really important. Basically, that's important. I think what it says there, the ACEs study shifted from the focus of what's wrong with you to what's happened to you. Total different approach. To understand, we're not looking down at some, not what's wrong with you, what's actually happened, and then how, through, can we help minister to those needs, and that's it was a very significant, I think, what it actually says there. So basically, that's wrong. Actually, it says KCF. It's actually safeguarding now. It is a team ministry. If you see something, say something. Not about because I know the person, because I like the person. We've got to be open and honest and protect both our children and both our adults at risk. If we see something, say something. That's what it's saying. And the 4 R's, really, if we get everything we've said, remember this. We've got to recognize, firstly, what is abuse and that you need to act to protect it. Secondly, we've got to respond, listen to the individuals concerned. Thirdly, we've got to report, make a note, and it is notes, not an essay, of all that was said and done. And fourthly, we've got to report it. pass on your concerns to the safeguarding person or pastor. So recognise, respond, record, report. Those are key things we need to do. There are a body, we have 31.8. It just used to belong to the BUC. Since I joined the conference, I have do a membership. So they send us things from time to time. I'm going to start putting this on the web page for the safeguarding now. That body is there. Any of us can ring them up because we are members from the North England Conference, so we can ring for support. And we will go to them as well when you bring your concerns for advice. Just make sure we're giving you the best advice, not because we know everything, we're all learning, but that is a good body which works with charities. They are Christians as well. They work with charities like ourselves. Please do previous slide.
I've
Yes,
just
we've
done
done
that now,
We've done
so
that for
I'm
you.
sure they've
Okay.
got it now.
But you will get the PDF or something, so we'll work on that. Professional services, there are many helplines, there are many other services. Try and get some local services that you have locally to you. Put them on the wall again that people can,
I mean, if you're
relate
in
to.
your own
Yeah.
church, we always say it's very useful to put them in toilets, on toilet
Yes,
doors.
definitely.
Because sometimes, especially if there is, for example, domestic abuse, sometimes it takes women years to actually get that support that they need because, they can be in a very abusive relationship and it's very difficult for them to get that support. So make those numbers accessible to people so that they can get the help they need.
And of course, finally, as I said, if there are any issues come out of this session, or always refer people to counselling. Sometimes people need general support to help work through those issues they've had and begin that process of healing. So the counselling numbers available there. Please promote that and encourage. Remember that as you do that, God will lead us and bless us. I'm going to say we've come to the end, but I know there are one or two questions, so I'm going to try and take some. If there's some DBSs I know, can you help me there, Sister Maxine, who's in order here?
Yes, Pastor, and we had these persons up with their hands for quite a while. So we have Beatrice, and we have Emmanuel, and Horace.
So Beatrice first.
Thank you. It's just a quick one for me, Pastor. It's when you were talking about the DBS, when you have to do, oh dear, the word's just gone out of me now. The repeated ones, the one that you pay for every year. What do you call them now? The word's just gone.
The update service.
Update service. That's it. The update service. I've got one from work. That does it mean that I've got to have, if I do the update for our church as well, that means that I've got to have two? Or is that if I'm on the update service for work, what do I do then? Can I use that one for the update service?
You see, this is the problem at the moment. No, at the moment, you have to have a church one. And certainly, this is the other advice as well, which we gave out last week. Even if somebody was going to use the service, the churches I know are trying to look at that, although we are trying to look as a BUC, your very first DBS has to be done with the church, because that's the only way I guess that's the way we would assess, and probably if I go back to it again, I mean, I've repeated this last week quite a few times as well. Ultimately, you wouldn't really go to your employer with the church DBS and I've got a church one, do I need yours? Because they would ask you. So this is our DBS that we have. This is our process we have. It doesn't cost you anything, and obviously we do an enhanced one. It is there particularly for, the use within our organization. It doesn't cost you anything. It's not that hard to do. As I said to you, as a church, we are also looking, particularly for our workers as well, for looking at the update service as well. That is something we're going to add in the future. But at the moment, this is what we have, so it's about trying to work together on this. Yeah, that's what we say in there. Is it Emmanuel?
Yeah, thank you, Pastor. Just as you said, so ours will run 2 years, not 1 year.
Yes, it's 2 years. 2 years.
Okay.
Yes.
And also, like we did register for one of our members, and we received a message that it's been posted but we haven't received it yet. So we wanted to check what can we do about that.
Right. Is that their DBS you mean, or?
Yes, please. That's the DBS.
Right. Yes. So that's what it means. I mean, allow the post, because obviously we just come from Christmas as well, isn't it? It will come. It normally they say allow 14 days. That's what they recommend. If they said it's been posted, it means they will get it. On that basis, you know, we will work things as well. If you are a DBS clerk and you've got that in process yourself, we would register you so you could carry on doing the system if we know you've got the DBS on its way. You with me?
Okay.
So it shouldn't delay things. Once it comes and they receive it, they need to contact you so you can just do the update that you've had sight of it. You need to have sight of it, put the number in, then your role is completed. You with me on that basis? But it will come. It will come. It's just in the post. Yeah, but it will come.
So lastly, is it being an assistant to I'm a church elder, but I'm assistant to the designated lead. Because she can do for herself. I've just did as you said about the DBS at NEC. I've sent an email to them so that I can get access to register for her and also to support her to register for other members of the church. So
yes, if you have done that already, we will look at it. If you want to drop me an email on the DBS web email address,
I've done it. Yeah,
you have a look at it. So we will look at that and make sure that's sorted. That's not a problem.
For the deacons, are we supposed to do for everyone or just the lead?
Well, with deacons and elders, I would suggest everybody because they are interacting with everybody in the church, aren't they? So
Because there are many. That's why. Thank you.
I know, but we, because of their role is they are
everyone.
across everybody. So you know.
Thank you.
Yeah. You just do that.
Thank you, Brother Horace. Brother Emmanuel, we have Horace now. Make your questions brief, please.
No, I'm not making a question. Just observation. Basically, in relation to you was talking earlier about the disclosure. Somebody disclosed to you. It's one thing that's vital and important. You don't probe. You don't ask certain questions because that will intervene with the investigation later on. So that's something we need to be aware of. Also, when the ACEs, I've just completed the ACE course because I work with children's services, and it's vitally important. It affects relationship also. It's a lot of stuff that it does towards a child. So it's just something for us to be more aware of. You can these courses, they're available free, so you can actually get onto them to get more understanding of ACEs. It's where 2 or 3 ACEs affect somebody, it can affect them for life. So it's something that we need to be aware of. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to happen for life, but it can. So we have to have the right measures in place to support them if they are going through any ACEs. It can be from childhood. It can be from any time at all. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Horace.
Very valid points.
Brother Horace, and then Brother Alan, and then Martin.
Okay.
Nobody cares.
Brother Alan, Chester Green.
Okay.
Brother Martin, Mapula. Okay, Brother Alan, Chester Green, I saw you.
Yes, Pastor. Yeah. Mine is like an AOB, just any other business.
That's always scary.
No. It's all to do with the family life, that's all, because it's part of safeguarding and the DBS, so to speak, you know. My question is, we always have some more problems where you, as a family director, have to visit churches. You are now in your second session. You haven't come to Coventry Central Church. How do you put these diaries? How do we request you to come to Coventry?
Right. Okay. Well.
Yes, honestly, because you see, we always do presentations ourselves, but we need extraordinary people like yourselves.
Yes, but yeah. I'm going to give a general answer because I will answer you offline, really. But I will give a general answer. Obviously, last term we had a 3-year term. There were 146 churches across the conference. What we have been trying to do is go to areas I have been following up some of the areas that we didn't get to last term. That's what we started off last year. And we are working through the process. So you have to be patient with us. This is a 4-year term, so we are working through. I am not going to say every single church in the conference will necessarily get a visit. What will happen, sometimes it will be areas that we will do, and we'll group a few together, because that is the best way to do it. Because, of course, part of our role is also to resource as well. So what I'm saying generally, because I don't want to jeopardize anybody on the platform,
good luck,
we
John.
are trying to look as fairly as we can. But individually, we can chat because we've obviously seen that. Brother Alan, I think you had a point as well, didn't you?
Yeah. Hello, Pastor Frank. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can, Brother Alan. Yes.
Oh, right. Okay. Good. Yes, I just wanted to mention that in the deacons and deaconesses training last Sunday, there was a presentation about safeguarding.
Safeguarding, yes, there was, yes,
and,
yes.
and they mentioned DBS checks. And one point I made was that they said that you must have a DBS check in order to do visitations of of elderly and vulnerable people. Yeah.
Yes.
So I just thought I'd mention that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Very
it's also,
important. Yeah.
Also required for visitations. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and I think that's a very good point, because you see, ultimately, you've got to understand, whenever you a preacher are going into somebody's home in that way, or visitations, that people sees you. You are the responsible person. That person sees you, so you need to be ensured that you yourself everything's okay. You know, it's natural. So I appreciate that, Alan, you making that point.
Yeah. You're also, Pastor. They also mention that DBS checks require annual renewal. A bit like an MOT on your car, isn't it?
Yes. At the moment, no. There were some people. At the moment, we need to be constantly checking. That's why we've got the. That's why you also have the documents as well. That's why you have the documents in the book to obviously do assessments of officers as well. But the minimum requirement, and that's all we're saying, the minimum requirement is every 2 years your DBS needs to be renewed.
Okay, renewed. Okay, yeah. All right. Okay.
It has to be. It has to be, and that's what we do in our thing.
Okay.
What do we have now?
Okay. Thank you, Pastor.
Thank you. Right. Okay. So I want to offer just a word of thanks to Pastor Simon, to Pastor Luca, to Sister Maxine, to Stella, and I think Brother Isaac, and those of you who have helped us today monitor the Zoom. It has been challenging with the numbers, but it's good to see that we have the interest, and you guys need to be the change makers to go out into your churches now and make that change and work. And that is crucial. We also want to suggest to you as well that I am looking for key people to form an advisory committee. So if you are something you are interested in, to come and talk to us. We are going to be building a committee to look at safeguarding across the conference and to obviously implement some of these things as well. I've talked to 1 or 2 people already, but I'm looking at those who may be interested to give some time to this so we can make things better. Just email us on that. The other thing is we're going to email to you your test certificate, your test to do. It's not laborious. If you've concentrated on this session, you will have learned a lot. The policy is there to help you. Please get the back to us within 14 days. As I said, because of the numbers, it will not be a fully graded test, but it will be a pass or a fail. And we can see, knowing we've done this a long while now, we can assess what you've done. So that will be done. That will make us qualified for this. And we do appreciate the time. Let us just have a prayer to close as we close. And then if there's any more questions we want to do, we can take a bit of time if you need to. Let us just bow our heads together. Oh, gracious Father, Lord, we just want to thank you for the time that we have spent. We pray that you may be with these officers, both the DBS clerks and the safeguarding leads, and the officers of the church as they continue to lead our churches. across our conference. You know, Lord, there are many things that we have to do day by day, and it's not by might nor by power, but by your Spirit. But give us the grace to do the best that we can and protect those in need, and put some of the principles we have learned into practice, we pray, and guide each one we ask, for we ask these things now in Jesus' name. Amen.